Jesus Christ.
Also noticed technical difficulty. I forgot to unmute myself, so that was fun. You guys missed that the most amazing introduction ever. That's all right.
It's a pretty solid introduction, yeah.
Yeah, it was the best of the best. Anyway, we're going to be once again recovering the Hedonite of Slaanesh book as well as the Daughters of Cain book. This is both their second iteration of their battle tomes. The Daughters of Cain were one of the oldest armies not to get a book, but to be honest, like they were so powerful at release that they kind of like their power kind of carried them throughout the entire AoS like 2.0 effectively, almost for 2.5 years. I think the original book is about 2.5 years old.
I think you're right.
And they were featured in the last campaign book that came out called the Morathi book, Broken Realms book, and a little bit of Slaanesh, but not that much. And then now today we're gonna cover the Hedonites first, right, Alex? Hedonites.
That's right. Yeah, we're gonna go over the Hedonites of Slaanesh. Of course, that is a redo. It's part 2 of Hedonites. It was funny. We saw each other at the game store picking up books and supplies earlier today. The sale rack at Guardian Games actually had the old book on sale, and I was like, "Oh, that's funny."
Want a discounted Slaanesh? Well, to be honestly, in a sense, which is funny, the discard both these books in comparison to the first book actually is more, like, I wouldn't say nerfed, but more balanced than the previous iterations of their books had released. And for context, when Daughters of Cain came out, and I was saying earlier, that book's power level was so high that it allowed them to survive the Codex power creep or Battletome battle creep as the edition went on. And then the Hedonite book, when it came out, like literally 2 years ago, it came out in 2019, like late 2019, I think, or no, came out late 2018. Sorry, late 2018. The book was so powerful. Hi, Andrew. It was so powerful because of the summoning mechanic that it basically like dominated the meta. Where it was the same thing that happened with Flesh Eater Court when it first came out. Everybody was playing Flesh Eater Court. Like we would go to a local event, and then like 40% of the field was like Flesh Eater Court. When Slaanesh came out, it was the same thing. 40% of the field was Slaanesh. But both these books, as we're gonna go and open them and cover them today, have drastically reduced these kind of like gimmick mechanics that Daughters and Hedonites used to basically abuse to win the game. Now, they're still very powerful books in themselves. They're just not as gimmicky as they used to be in the previous iterations. So,
that's right.
Do you want any additional points you want to make before I crack open this Hedonite book?
Not really. The Hedonite book, it was an interesting one, just the fact that it was something that was just really, really powerful for a long time, like you said. It's so funny that the matchups that I would see that I would love to watch, because I knew that I didn't have a dog to play in that fight, were Hedonites versus Flesh Eater Courts. Whenever I'd see that I'm at a tournament or I'd see them paired up together, just because I'm like, cool, I'm not playing either of you guys, so this is pretty great. The book lasted a really long time despite the power creep. You're fully correct. And even though near the end it basically had like 1 or 2 specific play styles that really worked and nothing beyond that, it's weird to see a Games Workshop army have legs for that long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's just jump right into the Hedonite book because I want to crack this baby open. So I'll put this one away for a little bit. She'll be back.
Of course.
Well, since we're not a fluff podcast, we're just not going to cover any of this parts. The art, I haven't even looked at this. So I have no idea what the art comment on the art or anything.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now on the ebook version. I personally love. Well, Games Workshop kind of forgot their great past with ebooks via a really great Age of Sigmar app instead of 40K. So this is actually like a fucking treat to look through via mobile device or via iPad specifically over whatever. It is a bummer that we can't use this for everything, but the fluff I don't think has changed all that much. I looked through some of it and I recognize a lot of the stories from some of the older book, but that makes sense. Of course, they're just progressing the story down the line too. So it is what it is. But yeah, okay. Let's take a look at these allegiance abilities.
All right. So right at the gate, we'll have same day download was yeah, Andrew, it's not 40K. Where you have to wait for like a week before you can actually use your book on the app.
Right.
So to go straight into it, actually this is I want to point out this is a fairly thick book in comparison to some of the other even the others that came Battletome. A little bit thicker, and it's a fairly like hefty book, so it's kind of nice that they basically decided to not just make this kind of like a weird like supplement release in a sense. The actual Allegiance abilities basically nothing's drastically changed from 1.0 in the sense that don't get excited, guys. Jeremy's wrong. Lots of things have changed, but no, we're starting off that there's only 3 hosts of Slaanesh. So basically, instead of having kind of like the kind of like corn, kind of like tribe setup or like demon setup, like the thing about like all of the other like Chaos God armies, they tend to have like a sub allegiance that are distinctive between demon or mortal in some cases. Like all of this, like for example, all the Nurgle ones have like the Chosen Sun, which are more like mortal specific, and then they have like one that's more demon specific. And then same thing with Khorne, they have like more mortal specific sub-allegiance and more demon specific sub-allegiance. Tzeentch on the other hand, kind of, but not. It's kind of a weird like hybrid. And then Slaanesh is just like a straight hybrid. There's just like no. Like demons and mortals and Slaanesh are kind of like symbiotic like relationship. So like there is no kind of like distinction between a mortal Slaanesh and a demon Slaanesh sub-allegiance. There's just 3 Invaders, Pretenders, Godseekers, which are the exact same ones from 1.0. Caveat, for one of the ones they excluded in this is the host of whatever her name is.
Celeste, right? Isn't it called Celeste?
I just call her.
Yeah.
Too many S's. No, it is technically a legal host, and it does fit into this framework. Surprisingly, considering they definitely did not got it right the first time. So anyway, nothing's changed in that regard, and we'll cover those rules in a bit. The Locus though has changed. The Locus of Diversion has changed very drastically from what it used to be. It's almost as if Games Workshop was just like, all of these fight face shenanigans and rules questions we get, we're done trying to explain how this works. We're just going to start removing them from the game in all the instances.
Yeah.
For context for the audience here, the old Locus was basically strike first. You would not really strike first. It would make your opponent unit strike last, which would effectively give you the ability to strike first, but kind of reverse cycle. And now, Alex, what does the new Locus do?
The new Locus? Well, I mean, the Locus of Diversion is fantastic. It's at the end of the charge phase, each friendly Hedonite hero within I can't talk today. At the end of the charge phase, each friendly Hedonite demon hero within 1 inch of an enemy unit can create a Locus of Diversion. If they do so, pick one enemy unit that is within 1 inch of that hero and roll dice, adding one of the heroes a greater demon. On a 4-up, so on a 4-up or a 3-up, that unit cannot pile in before it attacks in the following combat phase. You cannot pick the same unit to target this ability for the target of this ability more than once in the same phase, whether the roll is successful or not. So that's a pretty big change, I would say. I don't know how much utility it has, and except for very explicit instances. But even in those instances, like you're perfectly targeting something that has several inch range for their weapons, you know?
Well, it's huge actually. This is where like, but it requires finesse. It's not as simple as just like smash and grab, kind of like super tactic. It requires a little bit more finesse. So a couple of things that's key in this is the way it sequentially triggers. It's at the end of the charge phase. So you basically, if you successfully make that roll, you know for a fact the unit you're fighting you're in combat with is gonna be unable to pile in. So you're really like, it's really good for like keepers and like basically mini size heroes or monsters for Slaanesh, because it allows you to charge blocks of infantry on corners and prevent them from piling in for that turn. Basically making almost guaranteeing that you're going to effectively survive whatever the retribution attack is, especially if they can't pile in. Think of it like Hearthguard blocks or like Mortec blocks. Now your opponent can try to mitigate that by like, squishing his ranks together so you can still always get units in combat. But once you start thinking about like pincer maneuvers where like people attack both your blocks into two corners, your keys are incredibly loud, Alex.
I know. I was sending you a message. Your mic is cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay, yeah, it's because I'm sitting too far away from my mic. There you go.
Oh, there you go. Night and day.
Yeah. So, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna stay here and just move my mic over so people can see it. There we go. Okay. So reason that it's the tactic here with that one is basically just pincer move on blocks, basically, so that way you hit them on two corners and you prevent them from piling in, and all of a sudden like that unit can't actually like really maximize its output. And while it's a strategy a lot of AoS players have used, this one just allows you to do that one better, but also have the ability to just do it with one unit, right? Like if you basically corner hit a unit and you prevent them from piling in, not only do they lose the advantage of swinging back effectively, but they also lose the advantage of getting extra movement range. Because what a smart person would do against that kind of tactic is they would get charged, remove the models in range of your character, so that way they would basically, especially if they chose to activate before that character activates, they would choose to pile in a way. Well, they can't pile in, so they can't do that. But if you didn't have the ability, they would pile in a way to get extra 3 inches moving forward, especially if it was towards an objective. And as soon as you activate and start removing models, they would remove all the models in combat with your character. And then if they win the initiative roll next turn or going next, they can just freely move and got an extra 3-inch movement out of it. So Locus is still good. It's just not as good as it used to be, but it requires more finesse play now, which I know is a challenge for a lot of people. And then Euphoric Killers is the new rule for basically the Exploding Sixes. Now, a big change to that one. It's no longer Slaanesh. It's Hedonite only. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge change. It's going to really break the hearts of a lot of like bestigors. When they were like, what really needs to be nerfed even more was Beast of Chaos, guys. Like, they were such a dominating army. Let's just not even make them relevant ever. Marauder's sad as well, Andrew. But that's okay, because Marauders didn't need to be in this book anyway. Because you have Demonettes, which are just better than Marauders now. But they were like, the fact that like Bestigors or like any of the Beast of Chaos units can't even benefit from that is just kind of like insulting, because that book is like didn't need that extra nerf, right? So in a sense, it didn't. And then the Feast of Depravities. So that's a change to the Depravity summoning mechanic. Major change here. They almost hit they almost hit that one a home run in the terms of how they toned it down. Firstly, you know what? I'll read it out loud so the audience can understand it. Actually, Alex, can you read it out loud? Because I'm pretty sure if I talk away from my mic, no one's gonna hear me. Do you know? Do you have it in front of me?
Yeah, I have it right up here.
All right,
so. You can, first of all, with violence in excess, the walls of reality can be made thin enough to draw forth Slaanesh demons. So I fucking love that. You can summon Slaanesh demon units on the battlefield if you collect enough depravity points. And I like how they actually put the acronym DPs at the end in parentheses. At the end of the battle shock phase. So I believe it used to be end of movement phase, right?
Yep.
Okay, so at the end of the battle shock phase, which is a pretty interesting place to start putting models on, but it has a lot of utility, I think. You can
But that's
you
just to
receive.
count. Sorry.
Pardon
I
me.
know.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. You got it.
I can read the whole paragraph before jumping in here. You receive 1 depravity point for each unit in the battlefield that has a wound or a mortal wound that is not negated, that was not negated, allocated to it that turn, or has fewer models than it had at the start of the turn. So now it's more than just heroes taking wounds that earn depravity points. If you just lose models and units, you get depravity points. If you have any depravity points at the end of your movement phase, you can summon 1 unit from the list below to the battlefield and add it to your army. Each unit you summon costs the number of depravity points as shown on the list. You can only summon a unit if you have enough depravity points to do so. Summon units must be set up wholly within 12 inches of a friendly Slaanesh hero and more than 9 inches from enemy units. So, not only is it easier to earn depravity points just overall, but you have the ability to earn those depravity points in the end of the battle shock phase, and then you get these at the pardon me at the end of your movement phase, which I guess is not a change there. I'll say later on in this book, when we start to look through command abilities and relics, as well as spells, there's a lot of different ways for it. Just regardless of host, there's a lot of different ways that a Slaanesh hero can heal wounds, or Slaanesh units can heal wounds. So it's like a little bit of a gamble. Like, what if you say, okay, well, I want to heal like 1 or 2 wounds to the unit, but or to the model, but not like all wounds. Like, I still want my depravity points. Like, do you do that? Do you like there's some strategy involved with constantly healing your guys so you can constantly generate points, is what I'm trying to say. And I like that. I don't have the old book with me to compare, but what are your thoughts on the prices of some of these?
Well, firstly, let's address the reason why the change, because they used to be you generate depravity points as you take wounds, and it wasn't consent, like it didn't matter which phase it is. It's just anytime a unit would take any wound and did not die, they would generate a depravity point. So now it's changed to just anytime you take a wound. So you can't just, like, a keeper of secret that loses like 11 wounds doesn't give you 11 depravity points. It only gives you 1 depravity point. And they also changed it to not be anytime they take the wound, it's at the end of the battle shock phase, meaning that you can't just take a bunch of generate a bunch of depravity point in your hero phase through spells, the terrain feature, and other things, and then basically summon a unit during the movement phase. You have to wait a whole cycle to do that. So they kind of like address the problem of people taking advantage of it by going first on turn 1, generating like a shit ton of depravity point, and then summoning like 30 Slaanesh demons, like like right at the gate. So or 30 demonettes right at the gate, or another keeper, right? So they address that in this manner, and they also address the abusive generation of depravity points. So the only downside, the problem is, and this is what Alex was asking me, what about the changes to the cost? So that I don't actually remember the original table, because the table changed so many times. It's changed through basically the original book, then the FAQ, then when the host came out, they also released another update to the points, the depravity point. I think it's changed effectively 3 times. In terms of that, the new table is pretty okay. Like so if you think about it, it's like the big ones are the keeper and 30 demonettes. They cost 12 depravity points to summon. Also, caveat change we forgot to mention is their Slaanesh are limited to only summoning 1 unit a turn now, and not like chain summoning, which was a real pain in the ass and real problem in the previous edition. So that's a phenomenal change. And while and this is where I think they fell a little short of, it is still incredibly easy to generate 12 DPs in one round, in one turn. It is incredibly easy to do that. We have built, we've talked to some other folks about it. We have built lists where you can basically have a burning head of a burning head. You can generate enough you can generate like 12 DPs a turn, like every turn, very easily with like minimal point investment. And then because they did a couple things to try to address this, like all of the Slaneshi basically endless spells, the ones that people used to take to try to maximize the amount of mortal wounds, could they do them to themselves? Well, that doesn't affect Slanesh units anymore. They were like good enough to well, we don't want that to generate depravity points. But then they forgot to address the other endless spells that do that. So like the Burning Head is a big one because it's cheap, gives you reroll once to hit if you maximize its potency, and it does mortal wounds to your units, which means you generate depravity points. So you can basically I think you can with 800 points in investment, and it's not a terrible investment in terms of for board control, bubble wrap, and so forth. You can generate 12 DP a turn. And then effectively summon in 120 demonettes by the end of the game,
or one greater demon a turn.
Yeah. Andrew has a question. Big change is table white every battle shot. Yeah, you can definitely. It's any time a unit takes a wound or as basically takes a wound or mortal wound. So if your opponent goes first and makes you take damage, you're going to generate depravity during the battle shock phase. But I think we're just talking from the approach of I think they were trying to restrict it where when you were going to drop 30 demonettes on the table, I think they wanted it to be it's like a late game thing. It's because you've generated enough depravity points to do that. Or mid game thing. But what I'm telling you now is that you can, from turn 2 onwards, you can definitely spawn 30 demonettes every turn consistently with some of the mechanism. And it gets worse when you think about the host of which is basically still working the way it still works within the confine of this new rule, which is they generate double depravity. Instead of generating one per unit that basically whatever, I think they still generate 2. I don't think it doesn't. I believe it still works within the Feast of Depravity rule. It's a little weird though. It's because the Feast of Depravity it's not unit specific. It just says at the end of the battle. I don't know. They will have to. They just need to come out and say that allegiance is dead. Stop trying to use it. So.
Yeah. One interesting note is looking at the old Feast of Depravity rule. It does say that you receive 1 depravity point if a wound or a mortal wound was inflicted at the. You know what they do? They frame it a different way, but it's the same thing. Never mind. But the prices are certainly different. The cost has gone down dramatically on the price of different things for depravity points. I mean, Keeper of Secrets, for example, went from 35 points to 12. Yeah.
It's just I think they still thought there was going to be hard to generate DP, and then people are within 2 hours of getting the allegiance rule in Italian, we're oh wait, no, never mind. This is still really easy to generate a shit ton of depravity. And then I don't know who from our podcast is mentioning that any unit is missing model which generates depravity. Kind of, and not really. It's not missing models. It's any wound that is not negated. So let's think of it a Hearthguard or 2 or 3 or 4 wound model. As long as they take 1 wound, even if they didn't lose a model, they still generate a depravity point.
Yeah. If units got smaller due to casualties being taken, essentially.
Yeah. Any damage generates a DP. Why did they go with the acronym DP for Slanesh? I fucking hate that so much. Because DP is an acronym for many things. One of them is very Slaneshi and is definitely not kosher.
One of them is definitely Slaneshi. Not safe for work, but it's a weekend.
Sorry, let's see. Somebody says the next sentence. Yeah, it says, or fewer models in the head to start the turn. That
smells like John. It smells like John is in control of that chat.
It's the same thing as saying as taking damage. It's just there's just one because there's mechanics that remove models. And they're like, well, that still counts for depravity. Instead of saying, like, because the previous statement is negated wounds or non-negated wounds, and it's mechanics that just remove models do not generate wounds. So it just means anytime you take damage.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to jump into the Invaders, the first sub-allegiance.
Yep.
I will be honest with the audience here. Most of these sub-allegiance, mechanically, they haven't really changed much. The relics and the spells and traits are different. The relics and the traits are a little different, and they're fine. I'm a little disappointed with the changes to the actual sub-allegiance rules. They almost basically are verbatim copies of 1.0. Almost verbatim.
Almost.
So, Alex, would you like to start us off with Invaders?
Well, I mean, Invaders, like you said, haven't changed all that much, but you do have up to 3 generals in your army. Only one of them can have a command trait, but all 3 are considered to be the general for the purposes of using command abilities, which is helpful. You know, they all get extra range, essentially, for their command abilities. However, none of your generals can use a command trait or a command ability while they're within 12 inches of your other generals. So, in addition, each time one of your generals is slain, you do receive, or slain for the first time, you receive 1 command point. The Escalating Havoc ability, and that's from the Figureheads of the Dark Prince. Escalating Havoc is the other battle trait, and that's at the end of the battle shock phase. You receive 1 depravity point if any of your generals are wholly within your the enemy's territory. If all 3 are in there, then you receive D3 depravity points in addition, rather than 1, or instead of 1. And then, of course, Hedonites, Hedonite hosts that are invaders must include 2 to 4 Epicurean Revelers battalions instead of 1 to 3, and 0 to 2 Seeker Cavalcades instead of 1 to 3. So you're kind of shoehorned into battalions, which isn't crazy different, but
well,
still.
that one's useless because it's like a big ass battalion, so it's like never gonna see that table.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that one's useless, but whatever.
But looking over the allegiance abilities for Slaanesh and comparing them with some of the abilities that you can have as like the traits, though, there are definitely some interesting ones that can be utilized. It like I mentioned before, almost every allegiance is going to have either a relic, artifact, or both that heals models. I find it interesting that there is, one that's dependent on whether or not you had slain models for the general to just automatically heal D3 wounds at the end of the combat phase. But being able to reroll, looking at the best trait, in my opinion, for say an invader list, it's still going to be territorial. But that requires them to be in the opponent's territory. Reroll, you can reroll just hit rolls. But I really, really liked that Skin Taker for healing wounds, and then I really liked Glory Hog. At the end of the combat phase, if any enemy units were destroyed in that phase, and the general's still on the battlefield, you receive 1 command point. I think that's helpful as hell.
Yeah, especially Glory Hog, because Glory Hog, remember the Keeper of Secret War Scroll still retains the same command ability from the previous one, which is the double activation command ability. So it's still a very, very, very powerful command ability that you're gonna want to keep using as often as you want. So Invaders is definitely an army that has a bunch of like more CP generating mechanic. Your character's dying, or one of your 3 characters dying, plus like Glory Hog, as long as your general's on the table, and not within 12 inches of any of those other characters, you basically get another command point when you destroy an enemy unit. But it is unfortunately limited to combat phase, because one of the big things in Slaanesh they did this book is they added a lot more shooting to the book, and it's sad to see that they limited that one to just combat phase, which is a little. It's fine. I wish it was just more like at the end of any phase, if you destroy an enemy unit, you get 1 CP. It would be probably like that would be the top tier one for this sub allegiance, in my opinion. But you're right. Territorial is probably the next best one, because Skin Taker. So there are a couple problems. So like you can approach it 2 ways, because we're gonna transition in the artifacts here. There's an artifact that also does like healing D3 mechanic, but it's during your hero phase. D3 wounds. And then the Keepers of Secret also have a War Scroll upgrade they can take that can also heal D3 wounds after they kill any models, I believe, in combat. So you could kind of spread the love in a sense. You can give 2 keepers effectively the ability to heal 2d3 wounds a turn. One gets during the relic in the hero phase, and the other one gets it from killing anything in the combat phase. But the idea here is just like you could technically, or you can make one keeper heal potentially like 3d3 more wounds a turn. One at 3d3 in the hero phase, and then 2d3 in the combat phase, because the odds of a keeper not killing a single model is like almost non-existent. The only problem of all of these mechanics is that, like, especially the combat phase one, it revolves around you swinging last or swinging surviving. It's one of the things. It's like it sounds good on paper, but it's actually procedurally hard, because the things you're going to want to fight with a keeper secret usually have the ability to kill a keeper secret before it gets that heal. So it's unfortunate that they didn't word it a little bit differently to just say immediately after the model was removed you can heal D3 wounds.
I'm gonna have to agree with you on that one.
It is
I still like, I mean, like, I still like when the Rapier of Ecstatic Conquest too, if you were to put it on a keeper. I mean, I know Andrew mentioned that he's very hyped for a Slave to Darkness heavy or Mortal heavy Invader list. I still think that if you're going to bring an Invader, you got to have at least one keeper, because the utility that your keeper can have, especially in, say, the territorial trait, is just phenomenal. The Rapier of Ecstatic Conquest is pick one of the bearer's weapons. If the unmodified roll for that attack is a 6, which of course is going to generate an additional attack, they inflict 1 mortal wound in addition to normal damage. And that's, just pick the weapon with the most attacks, right? I think that's the sword, or is that the claw? No, claw's 1, sword is 4.
Are you talking about the keeper's rule, or are you talking about the relic?
I'm talking about the Rapier of Ecstatic Conquest, the relic for invaders.
It's useless.
You think it's useless?
Yeah, for keepers, it's useless. Keepers have automatically built-in mechanic when they roll 6 to hit. It does, instead of doing damage, it does flat mortal wounds.
Oh boy, yeah.
Oh no, it's Mr. Mephisto. Hello. This book is great. It's just we just actually covered in the first half of or in the beginning of the show. We were explaining that, like, versus the 1.0 book, yeah, it's a bit of a downgrade, but this book is like so much better in regards to everything else. So, and anybody who thinks this book is bad is not really looking at the whole cake effectively. Yeah, it's not. There is a little disappointment in there for me, and we'll cover that later, in certain war scrolls. But in terms of the allegiance and the mechanics, this book is very, very, as you say, healthy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can't always hit it out of the ballpark with some stupid, like, you should feel bad, aren't like Battletomes like Seraphon, or, as of now KO. So it's like.
And Seraphon is not even Seraphon. It's just sub-allegiance mechanics they need to address. Seraphon is fine.
Starborn.
It's just when it's a sub-allegiance that's a little bit problematic. It's just mostly like they kind of think it's like they suffer the Kurnoff Hunter syndrome. When Kurnoff Hunter, sorry, we're going a little off base here. When Kurnoff Hunters released in Sylvaneth, right? They were basically hard, like, because like there was obviously the bow hunters were like by far better than the other options, but they were priced the same way. So everybody was just spamming bow hunters. And then so the first thing they did in the next book is like break up each of those into a different war scroll, so that way they can make them adjust their points for balance. That's the same thing they should have done Starborn and Coalesce. They should have made the Starborn equivalent more expensive than the Coalesced equivalent.
And they already went there, because the battalions for Starborn and Coalesced are different. So
yeah,
despite like the Starborn battalions being worse in my opinion, and then having more points to them, whatever. But
yeah,
neither here nor there.
So I know you went straight for the back on this Slanesh book. I know you went straight for the Rapier. So to explain what Alex was talking about, the Rapier just basically does an extra mortal wound if you roll 6 to wound. It's actually really not that good on a keeper, because the keeper already has the same mechanic, but it just transforms all of his damage into mortal wounds when you roll 6s to wound. So this would just do an extra mortal wound. So it's like, okay, it's not great, but it's not bad. honestly, my favorite, and this is one that's going to be in almost every sub-allegiance, is the named differently, which is funny. They have similar relics, but all named differently across the sub-allegiance. It's the Rod of Misrule. Basically, well, as we talked earlier, it's a book that has some very powerful command abilities. So anytime you get to generate more command points, it's just always better. The Rod of Misrule is basically there's no downside other than the fact if you're.
I mean, there's a downside if you roll bad.
Not really, because you don't actually lose a CP. You give your opponent a CP, right? So if
you don't want that opponent to have any CP.
Well, yeah, but it's still not a downside. Like a downside for me would be losing the CP. That's like that negatively impacts me. If I roll 1, it gives my opponent a CP, which is like that sucks. But there's a lot of armies that don't really benefit from CP usage at all, like KO being one of them. So like there's just like yeah. It's just the ability of like 1 in 6 times to give my opponent CP, and 1 in 6 times to give myself D3 command points, or the rest of the time just generating 1 more additional command point. Like you can think of it like over the period of the game, on average, you're going to be generating like something like 4 or 5 command points. Unless you're rolling like shit the entire time, but that's an incredibly powerful mechanic to double like your CP gen throughout the game, especially for an army that wants a lot of usage of CP. Like one of the worst matchup you can have with that would be against Flesh Eater Court, because they have the exact same rule as the Keeper, basically. So you're like, yeah, I really don't want to give that guy CP. So yeah, but unfortunately, like I don't. That's the one that takes the cake for me, like for sure. And this is
okay. Well, let's take a look at Pretenders.
Sure.
How about you go with the battle traits now?
Okay. All right, Pretenders. This is my personal favorite sub-allegiance. I know, I'm pretty sure people are probably going to be playing Godseekers more, but this is my favorite sub-allegiance. And the way it works is basically you can make a really crazy general. Well, crazy in a sense. Like he's already crazy. He's just crazy strong is what I mean. So they have basically your general can have 2 different command traits instead of 1. But they have to be from, I believe they have to be from this this book. So that sounds really powerful, but they actually, the way they balance it a little bit is they tone down some of these command traits versus like some of the other sub-allegiances. And they almost kind of function like, honestly, 1 command trait. If you take 2 of them, they're basically the equivalent of 1 command trait from the other sub-allegiance. But whatever, that's fine. The real powerful mechanic in this is that you can reroll hits of 1s for your entire army as long as they have 10 or more models and the general is alive and on the table. So like having table-wide reroll 1s to hit with melee weapons for a Slaanesh army that explodes on 6s and hits on 3s for the most part is just absolutely amazing. I can't think of a better basically force multiplier for like almost no cost whatsoever. And then the Supreme, if you have a Supreme Samurai Battalion in a Pretenders, it must include 1 Slaanesh hero instead of 3 to 6. And this is actually a nerf, because the ways that battalion works is you get a CP if you roll equal to or under the amount of characters in the battalion alive at the start of the interface. So if you only have 1, you have to roll 1. So it's terrible.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I don't think you'll ever see that battalion using that sub-allegiance because it doesn't make any sense. And then the Warlord Supreme. So this is every sub-allegiance has like a depravity generating mechanic. He gets 1 depravity if he's within 3 inches of the general's within 3 inches of an enemy unit. He also, if he's in range of within 3 inches of 2 enemy units, he gets D3 depravity points. Cool, pretty easy if your general's a keeper secret to just basically do that. Now, some of the Warlord traits, command traits that they can take that's incredibly useful in my opinion, is the Strongest Alone, which is effectively because if you're going to play a keeper, your keeper's probably going to be self-sustaining in that army, and it just gives him the ability to reroll all rolls to hit, which is incredibly useful because you're trying to look for exploding 6s anyway. So anytime you reroll everything, that's good. As long as he's not within 6 inches of any friendly units. or models, sorry, for any models. And then the other one I believe is the strength of God. Honestly, it really depends on the type of play, because the second one's really up to you. But no, for Keeper of Secret, that's meant to be kind of like a killer character. The strength of Godhood is the secondary one, and it's basic. Once per combat phase in state 5 of the attack sequence, you can add 1 to damage inflicted by successful one attack by this channel. And the reason why this one comes in incredibly useful is the way the Keeper of Secret mechanic works with the mortal wound generation. So what that does is and this, by the way, existed in 1.0 as well. It allows you to sneak in an extra wound in terms of a damage roll. And then when a Keeper of Secret rolls a 6-2 wound, it transforms the damage from that weapon to be mortal wounds straight up. So you could technically sneak that in when you basically allocate the damage. So you could effectively, one of his claw attacks, I think, generates 5 mortal wounds if you roll 6-2 wounds. So you could make it 6 mortal wound. And that's a crucial one, because there's a lot of like really important characters or multi-wound units that you're like, I want to kill an extra model, or I want to make sure that character dies. That extra wound will basically guarantee that kill. I'm thinking like almost all of the Fire Slayer characters are nearly 6, at least the good ones are nearly 6 wounds a pop. Anytime you do 6 mortal wounds, it's basically almost guaranteed, 2 to 3 of the multi-wound models to die. Like, it's just 5 is a weird number. It usually leaves one guy alive. 6 is just the perfect number to kill like characters and like heavy multi-wound models effectively. So that's the reason why I like that one. Any of them look good to you, Alex?
Well, I mean, looking over step 4 specifically in the big rules for making attacks, I think that there's a lot of utility with the the one that you said is your favorite, Strength of Godhood. That is going to be huge, because you get to choose right then and there. Your opponent needs to fail to save, and then you go, you know what? That attack from that save you just failed, we'll add an extra damage. How about that? Your character's dead. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Being able to just choose right then and there, like, it's very explicit that they literally said you choose it in step 4, which is great. I think that that's really, really strong. I think that there's also some utility list dependent on, of course, Strongest alone. Just anytime you can get those reroll hits is always helpful, and we're starting to see a theme here, right, with these traits. And then the other one, of course, was where was it? The God Beast one. But it's just against monsters. At that point, if you're going to take the God Beast one, just go back to the Strength of Godhood.
Yeah.
Because it's got more utility overall. What if your opponent doesn't have any monsters, right? What if they only have war machines and infantry and beasts and shit like that? What if they just don't have a big unit?
Yeah, it's too specific.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I wish the way they rewarded the second command trait to be granted at the start of the game, so you could pick one that you're gonna use like almost every game, and then every time you walk to a new game, you can pick a second one based on your opponent's army. It would have been nice if they worded it this way. It would have been, this is like, all of these sub-allegiance are like this kind of like, it just needed a little bit more, and it would have been like flawless. That's why, because like most of these are exact copies of the 1.0 ones. It's like, why didn't you just tweak them just a little bit to make them like more exciting and more like, not exactly more powerful, but more like situationally like useful effectively. In terms of Relic, it's almost the same relics. Honestly, the relics for the Pretenders are not that great in comparison to the other 2 sub-allegiance. And once again, if you're playing Pretenders, you're probably going to play a beefed up Keeper of Secret, and the Pendant of Slaanesh is going to one that takes the cake, and that's just basically the one that heals D3 wounds at the start of the hero phase. So that, just because you're trying to make him live as long as possible, because if you lose him, you also lose all reroll ones to hit for your entire army. So that's probably the one that's going to see the game. The only other one I can possibly think in this list that's worth taking is the Silver Slash, which just gives you an extra attack on one of your weapons, which for their Keeper of Secret, it would be like the claw attacks, which are the big nasty ones effectively.
I mean, I like the Scepter of Domination personally, but
it's the problem with the Scepter is So yes, it's good, but also it. I don't know. It's when you're loading up on. There's not many battalions you can take in the Pretender's army that is worth it. So it feels like it's like a second relic. You don't want it to be your first relic. You want it to be like your second relic. And there's just not a lot of ways to make that happen right now in the list. So
I see that. Eh, eh. Oh boy. Well, what about Godseekers here? I mean, can I dive in on this one?
yeah, that's probably the one people are gonna play a lot.
Okay, yeah, and I agree. I mean, I really like Pretenders, but I mean, if I were to choose a Slaanesh army, I would probably start off with fucking around with a Pretenders list. But for Godseekers, you know, of course, you add one to the charge roll friendly Godseeker units, and then for the host, Hedonite hosts in your army, they have to include, they can include, or must include 0 to 2 Epicurean Reveler battalions instead of 1 to 3, 2 to 4 Seeker Cavalcade between instead of 1 to 3, same as before. And then when we look at the Maniacal Hunters trait, not only are they, of course, from Thundering Cavalcade, adding 1 to the charge rolls, but at the end of your charge phase, you receive D3 depravity points if your general made a charge move in the same turn, and you add 1 to that roll if any friendly Godseeker units, any other friendly Godseeker units made a charge in that turn. So, like you said, it's going to be probably the most popular because almost always you're going to, especially because of the command traits, you're going to have the ability to at least get that D3 almost every single turn of the game. Right. Maybe not for turn 1, but certainly 2 through 5. The command traits, I mean, I had written down 2 of them that I like in particular, but I think it's very obvious which one should always be the one, right? And to me, I keep on thinking back to the very first AoS army I ever had, having the Soul Blight Allegiance, having Swift Death, having a Vampire Lord being able to retreat and charge was just perfect. And Speed Chaser is exactly that. You know, you're in this case potentially a keeper can retreat and still charge later in the same turn. I think that's wonderful. I also really liked as a secondary potentially if you were to have like a different choice if you got bored. I love Sweeping Slash, which is if the general makes a charge move, roll a dice for each enemy unit within 1 inch, and on a 2-up they suffer D3 mortal wounds. That just adds utility if you have a bigger base. So if you have, say, a Herald on a Seeker Chariot, that could be really, really helpful in addition to what abilities they already have. Or you could just put it on something different. What were your thoughts on the command traits?
I mean, you already hit the one that's like that was my favorite, which was Speed Chaser. The only other one I could possibly think of is Trail Sniffers. It's mostly because I'm still in the head spaces. Like your general needs to be a keeper of secret. So anytime you basically give +1 attack to all of its weapons, it seems pretty good to me. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, especially since it's very easy to get, since it's like you have to be a whole even in your opponent's deployment territory, which on a lot of missions is basically the other half of the table. So
we got Dane in here finally, so he'll be able to enjoy us talking about his favorite army. Can't wait to get more condoms from you at tournaments for playing against
for safety,
for safety's sake.
For safety's sake, yeah.
Slanesh doesn't want any Nurgle to ever go around or on in you just don't want to have to. You don't want Nurgle rot in some way.
That's right. In terms of artifacts for me, the one that interests me the most, once again, Keeper of Secret mindset here, is the Girdle of the Realm Racer. While you do lose like 1 wound, you get the ability to fly. So like fly with Speed Chaser, it's just like it's incredibly powerful, right? It's the idea of like run and you can basically retreat and still charge, and with fly, so you can just retreat over your opponent's units and then just fly and charge something else behind them. So yeah, that's right. It's you can make a nice EBM keeper and got at Seekers, just like
okay.
basically truck around the table.
I disagree with Girdle being the best one because you do subtract 1 wound, and later on, the very next thing that we can talk about after this, you don't have to worry about giving your greater demon fly. You just don't.
Well,
You know,
you're talking about getting a spell off, sure.
yeah, I'm talking about getting a spell off, which no,
Yeah.
I'd rather
Yeah.
I'd rather not have a -1 greater demon that could potentially give it.
When was the last time you got to play against an army that didn't have like -3 to unbind? That wasn't Slanesh or that wasn't Seraphon or Lumineth or
Well, if the game heals and gets better, every single game isn't going to be that. You should have a wide variety of armies to play against, not 2 and then KO. Right.
I'm just gonna point it out. Like, if I have a way to make a keeper fly, there's a reason why keepers used to take Thermal Rider Cloak. It had nothing to do with it. There was nothing because they didn't have a spell that prevented them from flying. It was just like, you know what? I don't want to have to roll that. I just want to fly all the time.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the spells for Godseeker, I mean the relics for Godseekers, like you said, a lot of them are pretty similar but slightly tweaked. There's a CP generation one. There's additional mortal wound generation ones. I really liked oh boy, where is it? Is this not here? I thought the Breathtaker was part of that. Was Breathtaker not part of? No, Breathtaker was
Pretenders.
Yeah.
Pretenders.
It was the wrong one. Yeah. I guess Girdle is kind of the best one to utilize then in that instance. There are a lot of anti-hero ones. Dane liked the Father Charm Father Charm? What is that? What are you talking about, Dane? Okay, I don't know what he's talking about. Yeah. Are you there?
Yeah, you'll get there.
Yeah.
He's talking about 1.0 when you used to take the -1 to be hit feather and give you an extra.
Oh, the Glyph Feather Charm.
Yeah, which is gone now. So it's like
which is gone.
Okay. So I'd rather have fly.
Yeah.
Okay. Jumping into the spell lore.
Yeah.
So a couple of things I want to point out. There, once again, Beast of Chaos getting fucked over the ass for this book.
Okay.
There's no way for Beast of Chaos Slanesh Wizard to be able to cast anything in here. Why didn't you just make this Slanesh Wizards? Why does it have to be mortal wizards? God damn it, Games Workshop, where you gotta be shitting on Beast of Chaos more? Yeah, so
fuck them. They need a tome.
Moral of the story is they're like, you know what, Beast of Chaos, you get nothing. So,
I mean, Andrew's right. You can't have a goat that's a wizard. We can't have that at all.
Have you seen a dragon ogre? It's not a goat. It's a fucking dragon ogre.
Yeah, it's a dragon and it's an ogre. It's not a dragon ogre.
They have wizards and they can't fucking use anything. It's just like, oh my god damn it.
Beast of Chaos they need a big change. Hopefully a rebrand like fucking Legion Nagash is gonna get, but we're not here to talk about that.
No, we're not. Thank God, because I don't want to hear it again. Let's.
You're gonna next week.
I know I'm gonna. I don't have a choice in the matter. All right. So do you want to? Is there any specific spell you want to talk about?
You already know. The fly spell. Spell. I mean, being able to make. I'm sorry. What?
It's not that exciting. There's so much better spells in that lore. Like, why the fly spell?
Okay, it's not just the fly spell. When you look at the lore of Slanesh, there are a lot of really, really helpful spells. But first the spell lores change depending on what you're using. So there's going to be ones for greater demons only, one for mortals only, and one for Slanesh demons only. So if we're going to go with the Slanesh demons only, that one has 6, whereas the other 2 categories, you're allowed to use only 3 potentially, 3 spells potentially for that. They're all pretty low. I mean, like they're all casting value 5 to 7, which I think is funny. The I think Slanesh's number is 6, so I was expecting to have quite a few be just 6 for that reason. But there's nothing that's like casting value 8. There are some bonuses for things for casting value 10 on certain spells, but there's. I mean, I'm looking at Pavena Slanesh. If you could potentially do mortal wounds to an enemy hero. I'm looking at Lash of Slanesh, but that's a straight line and just on a 4-up thing. Enemy units can take mortal wounds. That's not great to me. I like the Soul Slice shards, which is casting value 5, and you roll 2d6 against an opponent's bravery within 18 inches. And the difference between that, if you roll above their bravery, that difference, they take that many mortal wounds. So that can be helpful in combination with the other spell, Phantasmagoria, which is casting value 7. Also pick an enemy unit within 18 and roll 6 dice for each 5-up. Subtract 1 from that unit's bravery characteristic. So you could do that first, and then you could cast Soul Slice shards and potentially do a bunch of mortal wounds. But besides that, that's the only combination to me that seems very outright, at least for Slaanesh Demon Wizards only. What about you?
For me, the best one is Historical Frenzy. It's like it doesn't even matter what everything else is. Historical Frenzy is such a powerful spell. Like I don't even know why they bothered writing the other 5. Have you read that one? Oh yeah, let me read it out loud. Historical Frenzy is a casting value of 7, so it's hard to cast. If successfully cast, pick an enemy unit wholly even 18 inches of the caster that is visible to them, and roll 1 dice for each model in the unit. For each 6, the unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So you're like, hey, that's a nice 40-man skinker unit there. Be a shame if they take 15 mortal wounds, motherfucker. No, that one's insane. Like that's probably the first. Like there's been a lot of spells that function this way, but this one's probably the best one I've seen in terms of like just straight mortal wound output.
Well, almost always when you see an ability like this, it's either on a 6-up or a 5-up, or sometimes on a 4-up, and it's just 1 mortal wound per. Yeah. So the fact this is a 6, but D3 each, fucking yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you face any army that like. Even if it's 10 models, you have 1.5, like on average 1.5, 6. That's still on average 3 mortal wounds. That's 33% of the damage if it's like a single wounded model unit. It's such a powerful like spell for and the fact that it's wholly even 18 and like typically they're pretty short range. I don't know. That one's just phenomenal to me.
But if we hold your sentiment from earlier saying why bother with the magic phase because you're always going to see someone with a +3 to deny, then why even talk about wizards and magic? Well,
it's because you skimmed over the best spell in the book, by the way. Because the best spell in that book competes with that fly spell, which is why you never see the fly spell on the table. So what Alex is talking about is there's another spell in that top bracket over here that you're going to see every Keeper of Slaanesh with because the one thing Slaanesh really doesn't want to fight is other hero characters that are just more deadly than a Keeper of Slaanesh.
Yep.
So, any spell...
Are you talking about Slothful Stupor? Because that's great.
It's not great. It's insane. It's literally insane. Like if the meta was back to the brawler meta of 2019 and not what the fuck we had in 2020, this spell would be like considered like almost cheating.
Yep.
Yeah, it would be just like it's like you read it out loud.
Yeah. So first the fly one that we talked about, that was Path of the Dark Prince. It's casting value 7. Unit can fly until your next hero phase. That's what we already talked about earlier. But the other one that I had listed in some of my notes from earlier was, Slothful Stupor is crazy. Also casting value 7. If successfully cast, pick one enemy hero within 12 inches of the caster, and it's visible to them until your next phase. That hero cannot use command abilities and cannot run or attempt to charge. That's great. Like, what if you do that to, like Nagash? What if you do that to, What if you do that to a fucking Ghoul King on Terrorgeist? That Ghoul King
Exactly.
on Terrorgeist now can't charge. What the fuck's he gonna do?
Well, it's not just that, but he can't even Feeding Frenzy. He can't use the
Mm-hmm.
double
Mm-hmm.
activate one. Or you do that to Catacross. Catacross can't do any of his command abilities either. Can't
No.
give his army
Yeah.
+1 save. Can't give his army +1 a hit. Like it's
Uh,
yeah, they're
yeah.
command abilities. They don't use CP, but they're still command abilities. So like in 2019 that spell would have been like the most insane spell in the game because it turns off like super buffer heroes, and it also turns off like super melee heroes. So
Think about it. Well, think about it against Seraphon, too. Like,
yeah,
I just thought of
yeah,
that. It's wonderful.
yeah. Yes, it's not quite as good against like multi-support MSU like priest, but it does work against like even Fire Slayers, like just basically
Oh, great against Fire Slayers.
preventing me from like double doing the strike first mechanic by removing and making that one hero cannot spend any command ability. Like for me, like that's the most powerful ability for a Keeper of Secret, because Keepers of Secrets don't want to fight things which are better than them in combat, and most of the time the only thing that's better than them in combat is typically another souped up hero that because reasons and this just basically allows them to like have a chance to counteract. And fuck, like, do you imagine playing a game where you get that spell off against that thing, and you're like, cool, I don't have to worry about that hero for an entire game turn, because if I would lose the initiative, he still can't fucking charge.
No, can't do shit. Yes. Dude. And again, going back to Flesh Eater Court, if you just do that to like the one of 2 to 3 Ghoul Kings that they have, and they're not expecting it, you're just like, sweet. Whatever flank that guy was on, if it wasn't in the middle, like,
can't even summon.
Whatever, deal with it.
He can't even summon because the summon is a command ability.
Can't summon, can't Feeding Frenzy, can't charge to actually do anything himself. It's just like, sweet. That guy's fucked. Oh, no, your whole army is fucked. My bad. Oh, man, I love it. I love it.
In this lore, between that spell and Historical Frenzy, which kills hordes, and this one just basically negates hero mechanics, like, you have some of the two best spells available to you in the game. Like, there's just like, not as Alex has pointed at, Alex reminded me as I pointed earlier, well, we live in a meta where there's like Techless and like, Croak and Seraphon. It's like hard. It's like getting shit off is like impossible.
Gosh.
Yeah, it is true, but still have those two spells. So
True. The other one isn't all that. I mean, like, it's mad by comparison. It's the Progeny of Damnation, casting value 5. Pick a friendly demon Hedonite hero within 6 inches of the caster, so of the keeper, invisible to them, and you can heal up to D3 wounds. If it's 10 or more, you can heal D6 wounds. Meh. What about looking at the lore of Pain though? I mean, nothing's gonna compare to the fucking forbidden sorceries from the greater demons. But the mortal wizards for Slaanesh, which, the Shard Speaker or Shard Seeker, whatever that guy's name is, or their name is, there's 3 different ones. There's Battle Rapture, Judgment of Excess, and Dark Delusions. They're all pretty low casting value, which I think is great for, those cheaper mortal heroes. They're literally 5, 5, and 4 in terms of casting value, which I'm all for. The first one, Battle Rapture, is casting value 5. Pick a Slaanesh unit, mortal Slaanesh unit, wholly within 18 of the caster, and you don't take Battle Shock test for them till the next hero phase. If you roll 10 or better, you can pick up to 3 friendly mortal units instead of 1. I think that there's some utility there, but especially if you bring, like what Andrew wanted to bring, like a whole mortal heavy Slaves of Darkness list. But there's also Judgment of Excess. Did you see that one, Jeremy?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
It's me. It's a shittier version of Historical Frenzy.
Yeah, but remember, if it's a mortal hero, he can't take Historical Frenzy.
But if you have a mortal hero, you're not casting that spell anyway. You're casting Dark Delusion.
Yeah, you're casting Dark Delusion. So what's Dark Delusion?
Dark Delusion is just +1 ahead if you roll if you beat their bravery on a 2d6 on a casting value of 4.
On casting value 2d6, exactly.
Yeah. So it can. I mean, it's against like Starborn, Death. It's probably not gonna happen.
No.
So, but it's still the better spell available to you in the entire thing. Yeah, we're gonna get. Don't worry, Andrew. We're gonna get to the Shard Speaker spell. I know it's better than Dark Delusion. Not every
It is.
mortal wizard is gonna be a fucking Shard Speaker, Andrew. We're gonna get there. All right.
Real quick. Did the Fane of Slaanesh change at all?
Yeah, the train feature.
Yeah.
The only thing I think it changes the way you can place it. That's it.
Yeah, they brought it in line with the other things. I see that from the description. But I mean, you can still make a sacrifice nearby.
It hasn't changed. Its rules hasn't changed at all.
Yeah,
they're same. All right.
Okay.
For some reason they always put this shit between like the War Scrolls and the rules for some weird ass fucking reason. Why this isn't at the end of the book, I don't know. This is the same thing with Crusade and 40k. Like, why do you put this shit in between the like this? Nobody cares. No one cares. Hedonite host. Sorry, what?
We were gonna go with the battalions.
Yeah, I was just gonna. I'm just gonna talk about. This is a big battalion. No one's gonna run it. Rules are terrible. Doesn't fucking matter. All right, moving on. They're not real battalions. All right. So a couple things. They did add some new battalions since 1.0, but most of all the other ones came back in some form or manner and had almost no changes in terms of rules. Supreme Cerebites is very good, mostly because you're gonna have 3 to 6 Slaanesh heroes anyway, and you do want more CP because Keeper of Secret commit ability. That solves that problem. Problem is, it's not the best War Scroll in there. In fact, it's arguably probably bottom tier for the other battalion. So
well, I will say
that one.
Remember, with Godseekers, for example, they require at least one Seeker Cavalcade.
No. Oh, sorry, yeah, Godseekers, yeah. No, they don't require one Seeker Cavalcade. It just says if you have a Seeker Cavalcade, you must have these things. Yeah. They don't require. There's no sub-allegiance that requires a battalion here. I'll bring it back up.
No, because I'm pretty sure.
No, see, it says Hedonite hosts in your army must include 0 to 2 Hyperion Reaver battalion instead of 1 to 3, and it's the big host. They're talking about the big battalion.
Oh, that's what they're talking. They're talking about the big host. Got it. Okay.
They're talking about this thing.
Got it. Okay, ignore. Well, I still think that it's interesting that Seeker Cavalcade added the other Seeker units. I think that adds a little bit more utility to that because it's still 0 to 4 Seeker Chariots, and it's 2 to 6 of Seekers, Blitzbarb Seekers, Sickle Blade Seekers, which are the 2 new units, and then Hellstriders in any combination. And still, if you're eligible to fight in the combat phase, if you're within 6 inches of an enemy unit, you move an extra 3. You move 6 inches instead of 3, essentially, when you pile in. So I find that there's added utility in the fact that there's now, the bigger Seeker units that you can use, the bigger models.
Yeah.
But of course, with the new battalions, I mean, they start off with the Depraved Carnival. That's mortal based, kind of. What are your thoughts on that one?
We're not going to talk about the other two. Got it. All right, it's moving on.
Wait, which other? Well, I mean, there's also Nobles of Excess and Exalted Speed Knights too. But...
I'm just wondering. Are we going this way? Is that it? Because I was going to go this way.
Which way are you talking about?
You're going straight into Depraved Carnival, right? That's what you just asked me.
Oh, the app puts them in a different spot. That's why.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to make sure. So I was like, okay, I guess we're gonna skip the next two. Sounds good. We can talk about Depraved Carnival. Never gonna hit the table. So moving on. No, seriously, it's like breakdown is 3 Lords of Pain or 3 Shard Speaker and 3 units of Blitzbar Archers. Blitzbar Archers are great, but they're crazy expensive for points. Like and then on top of that, this battalion itself is like 1,100 points or something. It's just like I'm like, you're never gonna see this battalion at the table. Because even once per turn in your hero phase, you can make 1 unit shoot. And yes, out of sequence shooting is very powerful. but it is crazy expensive to do that. Especially since we're going to talk about a book after this book that gets to do the same shit for a lot cheaper.
Way cheaper. Way cheaper.
We're going to ignore this battalion because if you run this battalion, guys, you're not going to have a good time. You're going to have
if you want to bring a mortal heavy fun story army, maybe.
Sure. Except those are the worst models they've released out of the entire new model line.
I love the entire line, but yeah.
I love it too, except the Blizzbard archers. I don't know why they made him look so fugly. Alright, anyway. Let's go to Epicurean Revelers, which is actually the battalion you're going to see almost taken every fucking time in Slaanesh armies.
Yeah.
You know, Andrew, I disagree with that because there's so many conversion possibilities of Glutos that I disagree with that assessment. You can make so many cool models of Glutos that's not just Glutos. Anyway, like I already have a thought in my head of just like kit bashing one of the Daughters of Cain Cauldrons of Blood with that Glutos model and make like a beautiful war shrine instead of like the Slaves of Darkness war shrine. Granted, the base size might not work very well. But anyway, moving on. The Epicurean Revelers is basically 2 to 6 Demonites units and 0 to 4 Hell Flares, Exalted Chariots, or units of Fiends in any combination. And it gives you the ability, and anytime an unmodified wound roll of a 6 is rolled by any of these units, or Demonette units, where they all have the Demonette keyword, except the Fiends. I believe the Fiends are the only ones who do not have the Demonette keyword. You get a mortal wound instead of just a regular like save roll. That one's insanely powerful because we talked about earlier about the fact that like 30-man or 30-man units of Demonettes, if they roll 6 to hit, it does 3 hits. So you can see like volume of hits plus mortal wound output, phenomenal, great. Also, Demonettes are battle line, so this already basically allows you to unlock your battle line requirements in the list. This is just like the battalion that like keeps on giving. It's like, I'm gonna take those units anyway. Great, now I just get to make them more effective in combat, which is what they're already supposed to be effective at. So perfect. And then the fact that you can take the Hellflares and the Exalted Chariots and they have the Demonette keyword, I'm pretty sure, meaning those chariots get to do mortal wounds on 6s to wound as well. And that actually gets a little crazy because I think they can generate on the charge. They can generate like a shit ton of attacks if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think that is really helpful because I mean, you look at this. Every single useful unit is wrapped up in a battalion in this army. So you will always have like maybe or you're gonna have more than one drop. You're gonna have like a 2 to 3 drop army almost every time. You know.
Yep.
And that just adds utility on utility. Because then, like you said, it's a 6 to hit, which is going to add potentially 3 attacks. So essentially, in this battalion, it just generates 2 attacks and then 1 mortal wound.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Seeker Cavalcade is the next one below. And that it's actually very good rule-wise, and the unit options are very good. It's Seekers, Blizzbard Seekers, Sick Blade Seekers, or L-Striders in any combination 2 to 6, or 0 to 4 Seeker Chariots. Like, there's nothing wrong with that selection, but the problem is most of those units are incredibly expensive points wise. So I don't think you rarely ever see more than 2 taken in that battalion, and then not only that, like the battalion itself is not cheap. So I don't know if you'll see a lot of usage. It's not bad. Like, I think in a Godseeker it's probably pretty good. The problem is it doesn't really the battalion rule is just allows you to pile in 6 inches in combat. So they can activate. So normally they do like the old Daughters of Cain thing. They can also activate combat within 6 inches instead of 3. So it gives you the ability to do some, combat shenanigans with basically positioning yourself within 6, but choosing not to activate since your opponent's unit cannot activate until you're there within 3. So you could do things where like you throw your keeper in there and you prevent them from piling in. And then after you activate your keeper, they have to activate against your keeper, and they can't pile in, so they're not going to kill him. And then your Seeker units, which are outside of 3 but within 6, can just pile into them after, and then just do their damage and facing no retribution whatsoever in swings. So that's a good way of basically making that battalion work. I'm just not sure if you're going to see it that often. I think this is probably second best to Epicurean Reveler, because the other ones they're all good, but they're very situational, and also very expensive. The next one is Nobles of Excess. It's for the two new mortal units that I fucking love. The Myrmidesh and the Cymbarif. Basically the really heavily armored clad new models. Wonderful models, looks beautiful. Can't wait to get a hand on some of those. But for fuck's sake, they fucked up the war scrolls for these so badly that it's almost not worth taking. I will say the Twin Souls have a place. The Painbringers are completely useless, and it's mostly comes down to they price them in a way that just does not make any sense for point wise. And we'll cover that war score in a bit, but we're not going to talk about this battalion. It's just not going to be taken. None of the point costs of like those current units. The Exalted Speed Knights is basically kind of like this is when we start getting into the more like bigger size unit battalions, and it just allows you those basically Seeker units to get a free basically a free movement pre-game of 6 inches. Powerful, but really not that powerful, because two things are going to happen in 3.0. The board size are going to get reduced down to the same board size as 40k. So extra movement pre-game for a very fast army doesn't seem very useful. By the way, this is a rumor, but we're all pretty sure that's going to happen at this point.
Yeah.
So if it was like a slow moving army or slow units, would be a very powerful mechanic. But giving it to Seekers, it's like they can already run and charge, and they move like insane speed. So it's just like, okay, like I guess you can catch your opponent if they completed the point on their board edge. Like I guess maybe potentially, but it doesn't seem worth the investment.
It doesn't.
All right, now we're in the War Scroll section. We're not going to spend too much time here because you guys all are able to see the War Scrolls on the app. You don't need to, basically us to do this. The Keeper Secret has really not changed that much at all from the 1.0. It kept most of its cool abilities, didn't get nerfed at all, so nothing weird to talk about. Celeste, didn't really change either. They did change the mechanic of how the power up of the mortal swing. It used to basically say that you'd swing first with the Demon Herald, and then if you and then you swing at the end of the combat phase with the guy she's basically on top of. But they changed it to say like if you activate, I think like after or at last, you get to basically get better hits. They rewarded that mechanic, but fundamentally she hasn't changed too much, or he hasn't changed too whatever. It hasn't changed too much in ability. So Laxi Hellbane, pretty much the same as well as the Keeper. Actually cheaper than the Keeper. It's incredibly specialized character to kill other heroes. Outside of that, it's pretty useless. So we're not going to talk about that.
Not the most useless war scroll in the book. We'll get to that. I mean, that one's obvious, but...
Contorted Epitome with the changes to basically what's it called, the Locus. It's not as good as it used to be. Its own special Locus is no longer basically about the no preventing piloting. This one is just basically you prevent units from swinging at the Epitome as long as it did not swing. So caveat here, as long as it did not swing. So you have to literally pass or test the dice roll, and you have to roll that thing last to basically make usage of that mechanic. So not that it's I would still consider taking the Epitome just for its ability of casting, because we talked about like some of the best spells are 7s, and her innate abilities, she can reroll casting rolls. So it is incredibly, she's just an incredibly powerful wizard, especially since she can cast 2 spells, deny 2 spells, and her own generic spell is pretty good, because it just gives you like reroll 1s to attack, hit rolls of 1s, and this is for shooting as well, not just combat, for up to against D3 units. But when I'm most likely thinking about playing Pretenders anyway, so it's just like It's not really super useful, but it is powerful. Hi, Scribble. And
Hey, haha.
uh, and then we're not talking. We're moving on to the Infernal and Raptures. This is the one that's going to be taken a lot because she is the best depravity generating machine that they have available to
Truly
them.
is.
Just because of like in early game, if you're trying to generate DP, the best outside of just killing yourself with a burning head, the other way is just playing wounds off units with range attacks. And she's just very good at doing that. And she also provides you with like some basically magic defense, which can also generate depravity because if they roll doubles, then they take D3 mortal wounds on casting rolls. So
Mm-hmm.
quite a good character. You'll probably see her quite a lot. Like I said, like I think like we were talking about like maybe taking 3 of them and then just smacking them with like the burning head to generate depravity
It'd be great.
on top of the depravity they can generate from like just shooting. So it's just if you're gonna see a lot of people try to build Slaanesh list to just be a summoning army and not really a combat army, and she's gonna be in that for every time. The mask actually changed a lot.
A lot. Yeah.
She became a little bit scarier in combat. Not that scary, but became a little bit scarier. And she's still not going to be taken, like because she unfortunately like doesn't fulfill any kind of specific support role in that army. She functions more as that kind of a melee character role, but you have keepers, so why the hell would you take the mask? It's kind of like anybody who takes the mask is just because she's a beautiful model and they just have a some fluff hard on for that character, but you're never really gonna see her in the table that often. She just doesn't. She takes a leader slot for an army that has a lot of leaders that they want to take, and she doesn't really fulfill any specific role that another unit can't not do a better job at. Let's see.
I mean,
everything else.
yeah,
Everything
and then
else is just. Sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say everything else is. I think we're on the same page here. Everything else is just a different version of a herald, whether it's
Yeah.
on X number of chariots. They really haven't changed all that much.
Yeah. The one nice thing is to talk about is the fact that the chariot ones they do like they didn't really change drastically, but they're just more consistent in terms of mortal wound output now when it comes to charging. The Hell Flare, that's the one I wanted to take a look at because yeah, so this is where that battalion in Hellflare gets really interesting. So we talked earlier about the battalion that does mortal wounds on 6s for Demonette keyword. Yep. So the Hellflare has this already like a ton of attacks. As you can see, its character profile, and I believe they all have all of them. It's commanded by a Hellflare with armed with piercing claws, and it's drawn by steeds. Yeah, so they have all of these attack profile. Plus, on top of that, when they makes a chart at the start of combat phase, roll dice for each enemy unit within 1 inch of that model on a 4+. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, for each 4+, add 1 to the characteristic of this model's melee weapon. So, if you're in combat with like multiple units, you can basically give yourself extra attacks. And then all of those attacks in that battalion would be basically generating mortal wounds on 6s to wound, on top of the D3 mortal wounds it does on a 4-up at the start of combat.
And the extra attacks on 6s on top of all that too.
Exactly. So there's this like incredibly point efficient damage machine. You know, it has good save, as a 4-up save. It moves 12, 7 wounds, and I believe it's like something like 90 or 110 points. I think, if I remember correctly, the Hellflare is 130 points. So it is a little pricey, but not that pricey for what it potentially does.
But it really makes you want, it makes me want, if I brought a Slaanesh army, multiple Blade Bringers on Hellflares too, just because you could just add up on that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of the Seeker Chariot. I'm just like, when it comes to Chaos, I just like chariots. It's like
yeah.
For me, Warhammer Fantasy Chaos is like chariots. Like for some reason, Warhammer Fantasy Chaos is chariots. Okay.
Well, the Seeker Chariots can retreat and charge, and that again has so much utility. So
yeah,
it makes sense.
And they do D3 mortal wounds when they charge on a 2-up. So like, chariots doing mortal wounds on charge just feels right. Then we have The Exalted Chariot, I'm not going to talk about that really. Like, the chariots are all pretty much the same mechanic. You guys can see.
Well, the remainder of the demon units haven't changed all that much
No,
overall.
they haven't. They haven't.
Yeah.
The Fiends changed a little bit, but not really that much, to be honest. They're still the same thing as 1.0. I'm not going to talk about these units because they haven't changed since 1.0. There's Gluttons. You guys have already seen his rules.
Bring us the Gluttonous, yeah.
I'm only going to say one thing and one thing only. Not worth it. Just not worth it. Cool model. I love the model, but it's just it's the hedonism bot of AoS. It's just, I don't know. He's just like he doesn't fit the army like very much. Like all of his like kind of like buffing mechanism. He has like that the Grand Gourmand, which is just like as the game goes on he gets better, but it's like it doesn't really fit a role for the army. I'm not quite sure what they were thinking. And also he's like priced like incredibly expensive. So if somebody figures out a way to make him worth it.
Andrew says, double cast is nice. I personally think that if you're gonna run him, so I think we're on the same page with the fact that like if you're gonna bring like a competitive like or a hyper competitive list, you're completely gonna ignore Glutos just altogether. If you wanted to specifically shoehorn yourself into a thematic list, whether you're trying to make it competitive or semi-competitive or not, like if you're trying to like make something your own and like do really well with an army that's not considered like top dog, I mean like, hey, like bonus points for you because I appreciate that for sure. But I think that he could have some utility in like a mortal only Hedonite list. I mean, of course he's mortal keyword, but the buffs he can give are for things that can be around him, right? And that's where you see the most utility. It becomes this like not Death Star, but this like bubble of like really effective units.
But it's only bravery. It's only bravery. Like his buffs are really only for about bravery modifier. Like it's +1 bravery and ignore battle shock. But then like the second half
and
of
all the debuff, like the battle has to go on around him in order for those to be the most effective. And he's an 8-inch move. And when I looked through this book, both with prior to this release and of course today, like reviewing it once more, if I were to make a list, there wouldn't be anything with more than outside of one mortal hero, which we can get to in just a moment. Everything I would have would be move 12 or higher, right? So he's a little slow,
Yeah, it's I don't know. Like he's very expensive. He's honestly not that slow since he can run in charge from turn 2 onwards. But
true.
Like he's okay scary in combat. I don't understand like what he like once again, what is his role? Like what does he like do better in your army than like other options which are like half the points and you can take 2 of. Like to be honest, the fact that he's not even a demon keyword means that his options for spells are just the 3 that we talked about earlier, which are all pretty garbage spells for like compared to the other ones. Outside of his like the one that he gets, and then on top of that, like since he's not a demon keyword, he doesn't get to a lot of the spells that heal are demon specific. So like I could see him being like incredibly tanky because he can get a 5-up shrug, he has a 3-up save, and you can just heal him over rounds of combat. With those spells, but once again, like, but why? Like, you're doing all these point investment for this model, which is already incredibly expensive. If I remember, he's like 400 something, right?
Crazy. I mean, going over to the next mortal heroes, I think that one we can skip really quick. It's on the bottom of that page. Lord of Pain, we don't need to talk about.
Well, let's talk about my favorite boy here, Sickvault, the most amazing.
Yes.
It's funny because like he in one of the photo he's fighting Eltharion, the light of Eltharion, the anti pseudo armor from Luminev, and they're basically almost the identical like character like when rules is design in rules design, they're almost the same philosophy, except for some reason Sigvault just happens to be like okay, yeah, much better. Okay, cool. Why didn't we just do that? Mostly because his ability to just ignore things that negate wounds or basically prevent shrug saves is just insanely powerful. It's just he can punch outside of his weight class, so
Wait, yeah.
easily, and he's only 240 points, which is cheap for this kind of like combat character. He's effectively always 5 attacks, and he gets more attacks depending on his charge roll, but he's always to a minimum of 5.
He's
And he
slow. He's slow, but he's got +3 to move, so he's always moving like a minimum 5.
Yeah,
Or his
and he
charge is always gonna be a
always
minimum 5.
fights first in the combat phase.
Hmm.
So that's insanely powerful. And he ignores any wounds on a 4-up. He's like mini Gotrek. He's like, he doesn't do mortal wounds, but he might as well be doing mortal wounds because they're Ren -2 with exploding 6s. And he ignores negate shrug saves. And he has a 4-up shrug save himself. Like, he's just a mini Gotrek. For like
Hmm.
half the points, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, and he's faster than he's almost twice the speed of Gotrek. So there's literally nothing wrong with this model whatsoever. What I'm blown away by though is his bravery characteristic is a 9 for Sigvault. That is very non-characterial at all.
So I really appreciate the photo with Sigvald versus Altharion because I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
old Warhammer Fantasy vets going up against each other. But
yeah.
also, I was reading through last night and I was reading the like new fluff, and I know that he was basically like they explain that he's from the world that was. They don't explain all of his origins from Warhammer Fantasy. They just say that he was a soul from the world that was, and he came to the world through taboo means. A brother and a sister like of royalty were his mom and dad, and they even explain that like Nagash was searching for his soul because Nagash was very pissed off that he killed one of Nagash's servants, like ripped him apart. And in the end times, basically, he goes up against Krell, the undead chaos warrior. Krell like scars his face with a slash on the face, and Sigvald goes fucking insane. And they describe it like he might as well be a part of Khorne and not Slaanesh, and just with his bare hands rips Krell apart. But like very shortly after, like almost immediately after, Throg the Troll King just literally smashes him apart. But I think initially smashes his crotch and then kills him afterwards. Like just it's a really weird way to go.
Painful death
But
for Sigvald.
exactly, but it's cool that they like describe all of that, and then they describe that he like Nagash was like, they explain he forgive or he doesn't forgive, and he never forgets. And he searches for his soul, puts him in a fucking mirror, basically turns him into like a whatever that thing was. There's some, I don't really know Harry Potter all that much. I remember that there was like a mirror at some point that shows you your like deepest desire. It's kind of like that. Like he becomes this like mirror where people see their idealized version of themselves. They mentioned that the first people to find this thing in this, it's under Shadespire, and they say that the first people to find them were a bunch of Arcanaut company, and when they see themselves in the mirror, they see themselves as like adorned and like awarded admirals, and they're like hot shit. And eventually he gains more power because he like sucks up more of Slaanesh's power as Slaanesh gains in power, and then he gets found by like a pretender or Godseeker. No, he gets found by Godseeker host,
Yeah.
and he's able to finally like break out and like kill the Godseeker leader and like take over. But
Yeah, he's
they mentioned even what.
he's the Warhammer Fantasy Battles version of Dorian Gray.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he broke out, and then they even mentioned that now he's got a vendetta against trolls. Like he hates trolls, and I think it's a missed opportunity for like a slight fluff rule, but like being able to like re-roll maybe wound rolls against like troll units. I think that would be great because they explicitly mentioned that he did that, and they also mentioned that he's going out. He needed to find his legendary sword again, but his legendary sword is called Silver Slash, which is actually an artifact
Yeah.
in the Hedonite book, but
Yeah.
now it's just called Shard Slash. So yeah,
He got downgraded. Um,
not with that rule, but okay.
let's talk about the model that Andrew wants to talk a lot about. He's been fucking craving it for the entire time we've been
Shard
recording
Speaker.
this. The Shard Speaker of Slaanesh.
Oh yeah.
You know what, Andrew? How about you talk about that model?
Oh, he can't.
I know that's the point. Honestly, like Andrew, I'm sorry to tell you, but like she's powerful, but she's incredibly limiting. She yeah, she's an incredible support character, but a lot of her problems is like her range are incredibly short. The one where it's not only do you have to roll for it, so it's on a 3-up, so there's a 1/3 chance of not going off. You have to be within 9 inches of the enemy unit with an incredibly squishy character. And then she's a wizard, but her spell is a 12-inch wholly within 12 inches enemy unit. Suffers -1 to wound, to basically to attacks, which yeah, she's debuff and buffing at the same time, which makes her seem pretty amazing. But once again, 6-inch movement, support squishy character, and an army that doesn't move that like slowly. Like most of the rest of your Slaanesh army wants to be like basically fighting flanks. They don't want to be fighting centers. Like I don't know. Like I can
I disagree.
see some.
I disagree. I think.
Sorry, what?
Real quick, they're 150 points. They're pretty average. I would say slightly above average in terms of some casters.
That's expensive. 150 points for her? Are you serious?
She's 150 points. You're right. Yeah. So
fuck?
normally 120 to 140 is pretty average, I would say, for cast 1 casters. Like I'm thinking Star Priests, I'm thinking Star Seers, I'm thinking Necromancers, etc. Like 120 to 140. So and even OBR casters are around that range too. So yeah, 150, slightly more expensive. The Twisted Mirror is pretty helpful, being able to add, it's basically you have like a prayer on top of your regular cast. It is a little annoying that that there are 10 more points than again a Star Priest or a Star Seer, despite also being level 1 casters with a 3-up buff ability that is okay. So I agree that they should have just been 8-inch move. If they were 8-inch move, this would be an auto include in every army, even with 150 points, I think, because you put them in a pack of 30 demonettes that are +1 to wound suddenly, and things can get very, very silly very quickly. I still think that it's got utility, at least one of them, but I think that you would have to keep it in a pack, protected in a pack of demonettes, like 30 demonettes, like chained with maybe 3 cornering it in the end, and then it's constantly running every single turn. It has to run, or else it basically isn't going to do anything. So that's pretty important.
She's a best as a 130-point character. She is not a 150-point character. Like
My apologies. She's not 150.
She cannot be 150. Like this, she's just not worth the 150. Sharded.
150. I'm not going unless my codex
it says 150 in the book, but I cannot believe she's 150. She's like incredibly expensive for literally almost not much. Like let's be honest, guys. Here, like most of the combat rolls you're gonna have for winning rolls are gonna be 3-ups. Like which unit in here doesn't have a 3-up to wound in combat? That's like basically designed for combat. Let's look at demonettes.
Again, I think this all
4-up. Okay, so you can buff demonettes. Nice.
You can buff demonettes, yeah, because they're 4s and 4s. So that's what I'm trying to say. Is that's super helpful. But again, if you're going to bring multiple, then you're obviously bringing like a mortal heavy list or some shit like that. But it does. I mean, their buffs are regardless of what they're.
But all the mortal stuff wounds on 3s. That's why I'm so confused at like what the fuck like you use her for.
Kind of. Blitzbar bows cast on.
But the bows don't work for that. This is only for combat phase. This is only for combat phase, and it's only the next following combat phase. So like you basically it's a 14-inch effective range because it's 6 plus I guess run and then another 9-inch for the prayer, but it only affects the next combat phase. So it would only be for combat, and honestly, the only thing I see really benefiting from this seems to be the demonettes. Like it's not like the other units don't benefit just as much. It's just that why am I spending 150 points to buff up things that went on 3s already? I mean, honestly, I'd rather just spend that on something else. In my opinion, the debuffing mechanism can be interesting, but since it's wholly in 12, it's kind of hard to use on the battlefield. Like I don't see that ever going off until like maybe turn 3, maybe turn 4, if she's still alive. I don't know, like for me, like I see the entire playstyle of Slaanesh as being like pincers and like using maneuverability to engage advantageous combats. I don't see them as like a brawler type army that sits in the middle of the board, and like she fits the brawler type game plan way more than like the flanking game plan.
Oh, I agree. I think that the modern Slaanesh army is going to, again, be minimum movement 12. Almost everything's going to be movement 14. I would use nothing but Seekers, nothing but Hellstriders, nothing but Keepers, and maybe some support with Herald.
If Myrmidesh Painbringers were better or cheaper, let's just be honest, just points cheaper, I would say maybe you got a brawler type list you can build with Slaanesh. But the fact that these guys, by the way, and here's the rules for the audience who doesn't know, they're 2 wounds a model, 6-inch movement, a mediocre attack profile, 1-inch reach, 2 attacks, 3s, -1 rend, 1 damage. They basically get, anytime they roll 6 to a wound, they do a 1 mortal wound on top of regular damage, and they get to reroll saves only in combat. So you're like, cool, not a bad like elite unit. How many points is it, Jeremy? For 5, it's 150 points. That's insane. Like, I play Fire Slayers, and these guys are basically the equivalent of a Hearthguard, except like Hearthguards are more durable and have more damage output, and they have 50% less movement speed, but like they have double the damage and pretty much almost a little bit better in defense. I pay 120 points. Like this unit, like, yeah. Why is it 150? It doesn't make any sense. And the other thing, I think it's anytime Games Workshop writes a rule that says reroll saves, they for some reason think this reroll save is like one of the most powerful mechanic in the game, and they just price it, they tax it. But the thing is, it's a combat unit. It's gonna fight combat things. How often have you seen a combat unit that doesn't just have like -2 rend, or ways to buff up their rain damage, or do just straight up mortal wounds and bypass your saves altogether? It's just like I don't understand the intention of paying a vast premium tax for a rerollable save in only combat, by the way, only combat, which is once again like, at least if there were 3 attacks pop maybe, or 2-inch range maybe, like the fact that there are like 42 mil bases with 1-inch range, and 150 points for 10 or for 5 is just incredibly expensive. Their twin unit though. Sorry, go for it.
Mm-hmm. What's their twin unit?
Well, the Twin Souls, like the ones that's from the same kit. You can make them, or which are drastically better, but still incredibly expensive for some weird ass reason. Just because they at least have some defensive mechanism that actually matters. They can choose to give themselves a 5-up shrug on top of a 4-up save, 2 wounds a pop. They move 8 inches, so they're goddamn fast on the table.
Remember that they can't have the 5-up shrug, or you have to switch each turn between the 5-up shrug and the reroll and hit roll.
Yeah. But that's okay. It's still better than what the fucking Paintbringers have. That's the issue.
What really bums me out when it comes to these new models, some of the new mortal models, is I fucking love these giant Seekers, the Sickle Blade Seekers and the Bliss Barb.
The Sickle Blade and the Bliss Barb,
Looking at the point cost, 5 Sickle Blade Seekers is 200 points. 5 Bliss Barb Seekers is 180 points. They're both movement 14. The Sickle Blade Seekers can run and charge. And each one, both units, whether it's close combat or range.
They don't run. I'm sorry. They don't run in charge. The Seekers re-roll charges.
Oh, my apologies. You're right. Re-roll charge. And they all move 14. They all have four wounds and a 5-up save. And bravery 6. They all have the 2 tongue attacks and then 3 either ranged attacks or 3 close combat attacks, whether it's Sickle Blade or Bliss Barb. And no matter what, a 6 to wound or my apologies. 6 to wound causes 1 mortal wound in addition to normal damage, but 200 points for the Sickle Blade. Like, I can see that utility in the Bliss Barb Seekers, just because they do hit on, they hit on 4s, which isn't great, but that's 3 attacks at range. But still, like, I don't know, and they get to run and shoot. The Bliss Barb ones do, rather than reroll charges. But just 180 and 200 points for both of those, like, I'm very lukewarm on that.
They're also fucked up their bravery, because they're an elite Cav unit that has bravery 6, meaning anytime they take 1 casualty, they can lose another one in bravery. They're designed incorrectly for what they're supposed to be. Slick Blade Seeker needed to be glass cannon cavalry, but they don't actually sort of the glass cannon. Like they don't hit for shit. Like 3 attacks, I hit on 3s, wound on 3s, -1 and 1 damage with the potential of exploding 6s and 1 additional mortal wound on a 6 to wound. It's like, why? Like that's not really hard hitting at all. And you're just trying to fish for 6s and you have no inbuilt reroll mechanic. Like the only thing that works is that battalion that makes them pilot 6 in combat, so you can at least avoid being swung at. So that way you can still get to swing. But like when you get to swing, you hit like kind of a paper towel. Like you're not that hard. You don't hit that hard. There's like the fact that the glaives are damage 1 and not damage 2 makes no sense to me. Like they should have been at least damage 2 on the charge or something, for fuck's sake. Like just a single mortal wound on a 6 to wound is not that attractive for that unit, and the point cost just doesn't warrant their like. They're frail. They die to bravery checks like fucking like they really quickly, like and they're just like they're not that hard hitting. I'm not sure what they were thinking when they wrote those rules to them. They're fast, that's for sure, but they're not that hard hitting.
I think we may need to switch over to Daughters of Cain because the rest of these units too are also just lackluster. Blitzbarb archers are meh. Zangor Fiendbloods are the worst battle scroll in the fucking book, and then the dread pageant, like I don't even understand the use of it.
Well, the Blitzbard are actually not that bad. They're just crazy expensive is a problem.
Yeah,
they're insanely priced for what they are. So
11 models for, or rather,
yeah, it's 11 models.
11 models for 160 points. No, and there's no discount in anything in the entire book. So
yeah, they're going away from unit discounts. Period. A lot of the books don't have the new ones don't have unit discounts. So yeah, guys, there's nothing to talk about the endless spells. They're basically identical. Honestly, the mesmerizing mirror is so powerful in this current meta that I think like it'd be shocking if I don't see it almost taken every. It's expensive, but it is one of the most powerful. Basically endless spell right now I think in the meta because there's so many armies of support heroes, and basically like that thing can like clip if it clips like 3 heroes, it's still doing like a potential of like killing all of them. It's like every time. So I don't know, we'll see what the meta upholds in 2021, but honestly right now, like for me the mesmerizing misery seems to be the one that has the most prevalent
I still get a really big kick out of the fact that when Fiendbloods first came out, every single Chaos player I know, some well-known ones as well, got so fucking excited about Fiendbloods, and the whole time I was thinking there's no way they're going to make every single god version of Beast of Chaos as good as and as has the level of utility as Sangor's, especially when it's just one unit. I was like, I'm waiting for this to be a really bad war scroll, and thankfully, it was a really bad war scroll.
Yeah, I'm not.
You're so full of words about that.
I don't have any like. You know, everyone already in a tear about how they kept fucking like Beast of Chaos, and they were like, hey, here's another one to insult you, Beast of Chaos players. Here's this Fiendbloods. They're terrible. Enjoy. Great models, but terrible.
Yeah, well, you know, of course, there is the mirror for Hedonites, and that's going to be Daughters of Cain. That's probably where we should probably switch on over.
Okay. Let's go take an intermission break for a little bit. You can entertain the audience, but I have to make myself another round of coffee. So we'll be back. We'll be back. Well, I'll be back. I don't know if you want to stay here, you can and talk to the audience. But if not, I'm going to be back in about 2 to 3 minutes. I'm just going to make myself a new, get some water, get some coffee. Yeah,
get some water, get some coffee. I'll answer any questions anyone has about our thoughts on the Slaanesh book while he's taking a quick break. Anyone in chat, what are your guys' thoughts? Is anyone really excited to build any sort of list? Dane, if you're still on here, I know that you and I are going to have to play sometime, hopefully this year, some point in time. Well, obviously, we're going to try to get a TTS game in. We're going to try to make sure that we can give you the practice that you need, give you the practice that you want, and yeah, I'm really curious about what's going to happen with future battle tomes down the line. But you know, Slaanesh is going to be a book where, like Andrew mentioned, there needs to be a discount, and that discount, I would say, would be about 10%. I would actually probably even it out to just about 5% because some things, especially some of the heroes, I would say are pretty reasonably priced, with the exception of Gludos. I don't think that he's priced well at all. He's priced badly, in fact, at least in my opinion. But yeah, I just want more. uh, yeah, Andrew, let me know whenever you are free for TDS, and if you want to if you want to test out any list, I'll fucking do it. Depending on how brutal you want it, I can bring my Night Haunt, my OBR. If you want me to be a big shithead, I can bring Starborn Seraphon. I can bring Coalesced, which is my baby. It really depends on what you want to play against. I'm pulling up the Daughters of Cain stuff too while we're at it, just because, there are obviously changes. Some happy changes, some less happy. But yeah, let's see. Okay. Also, it looks like we got a lot of people in chat right now, specifically in Twitch. So if you guys could definitely like and subscribe on, give us a sub if you can on Twitch. Also on YouTube, if you're on YouTube, please rate and review on Facebook and on Apple Podcast. Always appreciated. In fact, while you're at it, try to subscribe onto Apple Podcasts or even on Spotify. We release via Podbean, and we're going to be releasing an episode today, a little later than our average here. But Podbean app is kind of shitty with us. I didn't find that out until literally this week. But do give us the feedback where need be if you can too. We've gotten some really good feedback lately, which is very helpful. Yeah. And then looking at this Daughters of Cain book, I'm a big fan of some of this artwork and the painting tutorials. Holy crap, they're amazing. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I'm looking at the how to paint guides for Daughters of Cain, and I'm getting really excited with the fact that I can use some of these strategies for my Seraphon, specifically Snake Lady Scales. I'm just like, oh, I am definitely going to use this. Okay. Pretty quiet chat here, you guys. Let's see. You're scheming with the host of the Everchosen stuff. What were your thoughts? Like, did you have a certain combo that you were interested in? Like, I'm looking over the book and I'm trying to see the utility here. If you're trying to make that type of combination, I'm not quite certain that it's There's going to be a lot there.
Okay, I'm back.
He is back.
I got my coffee, got my water, and I got my beer. So I'm good to go.
There you go. There you go. While you're at it, you do that. You take a look at some of the parts of this book. I'm gonna be right back and do the exact same thing.
Sure. Was there a specific question?
No. Andrew is trying to see what he can do to fit in the essentially ever-chosen units to this army.
The problem is there's not a lot of synergy between the way they changed the Slaanesh mechanics to just be like Hedonite keyword only. One of the thing I'm considering of Slaanesh is just the chariot combination, the chariot basically battalion with like kind of like the battalion from Slaves of Darkness that also takes more chariots that do mortal wounds when they charge and so forth. Oh, you mean Lurid Haze? Is that what you're talking about, Andrew? The Slaanesh sub-allegiance in there? The one that's Godseeker, I think? Is it Godseeker? Or Invaders? I forgot. Let me, I can't take a look at it. Unfortunately, my phone's is actually the one recording the books right now. But I'm guessing you're talking about the Lurid Haze, right? The one that has the outflanking unit? Where people use it to outflank like Archeon or something? I do want to point out that like Faultless Blades. Okay, I'll take a look at that when I get a chance. I actually been like having a hard time deciding on what kind of Slaanesh army I want to build. So, a couple things. You guys who watched the stream games. I have an incredibly large AoS collection of armies, but the one I've always been having a hard time building and feeling comfortable with has been basically the Chaos Mortals. I'm not a big fan of Chaos Demons per se. I'm a big fan of Chaos Mortals, but for Slaves of Darkness book until the last one has been pretty mediocrely bad. Corn Mortals has been like not very good in a long time. The Nurgle Mortals is basically you just play Blight King, and I'm like, why would I do that? I can just play my Fire Slayers. It's like fits like no other different playstyle whatsoever. The Slaanesh one is the only kind of like I guess there's Tzeentch, but Tzeentch mortals are pretty much non-existent. You're gonna have to play demons. So the only option left is basically Hedonites. And I was really looking forward to after I saw the Myrmidesh models coming out. That I'm like, oh my god, I want to play these models. These are amazingly beautiful models. Unfortunately, the rules for the Myrmidesh are fine. There's just the point costs are just stupid. So they're probably never going to see the table. But I still want to use these models. They're incredibly beautiful. So I've been considering like using them as like basically Chaos Warriors, like with shields and sword instead, or using them as Chosen. Because like I think the Twin Souls make great Chosen like basically stand-ins. The problem is I'm guessing people would have a huge problem with kind of like you like showing up Hedonite. Yeah, these aren't Twin Souls, these aren't Myrmidons. They're warriors and Chosen from Slaves of Darkness. It makes you feel any better, at least I don't get exploding 6s to hit. So but like from a point cost like the Painbringers should be like around 120. They're like, I just don't understand why they're like 150 points. And the Twin Souls being 170 also doesn't make any sense to me. There should be around 120 as well. Like they're not drastically like much different than the Painbringers in terms of durability, but they're just a little bit more functional because of how their rule works and the fact that they're much faster, right? So the points just make no sense for those two units. Now, keep in mind though, maybe this is this book series. These books have been thought out of with the new AoS 3.0 coming out, and maybe there's a reason why in AoS 3.0 like these point costs make sense. But honestly, like until I see for a fact like changes for 3.0, I just don't really. These point costs make no sense until then. Which makes me really worried, by the way, for the Lumineth release that's coming out later this year. Because, two gripes. I bought the entire model line of Luminev for the first release. That was going to be my army for 2021 that I wanted to build and get painted by Carl Payne, the guy who painted my Imperial Fist. With beautiful paint job, amazing painter. Won ITC hobby track quite a few times actually. And I'm looking forward to handing him my Luminev, but now I'm like, shit, my army's going to double in size because of these new models. And it's just like, it's kind of unfortunate to have like built the entire collection and army you want to play for an army, and then finding out like 6 months later that you have to like, oh, it turns out like you're probably only going to use maybe a third of those units because the rest of the books that are coming out are just much more valuable and interesting. So, but I'm worried that now, like with the points I've seen from the Hedonites, and even to an extent the Daughters of Cain book, that the new Luminev stuff is going to be crazy expensive and totally useless because it's just unusable on the table because of the points. They're already expensive as it is from the last release, but these new units are looking like we're going to be like dealing with like, oh yeah, you like these 5 Blade Masters? They're going to be 180 points for the units. It's like, I don't think I want that. Anyway, are we ready to start the Daughters of Cain breakdown?
Yeah, let's talk about Snake Elves.
I mean, we just talked about Snake Men, so let's talk about Snake Elves. So.
Well, kind of. I mean, like, you talked about, of course, getting Slaanesh, and having an army that you've wanted to start that you weren't really curious, or that you were kind of like on the fence on. For a long time, that's how I felt about Seraphon, and then I started it, and then I found out that, you know, it has a really bad reputation now because there's some stupid shit, that broken mechanics, of course. But I've really, really, really always liked like dark elf aesthetic kind of stuff, and I have been waiting for a long time for the potential of Shadow Elves, and I think that when they come out, if there is some gorgeous models, I'm going to dive straight in. But I don't know why they haven't even released anything yet. Like the not Shadespire, Warcry. There's like a Warcry
Shadow Stalkers.
Like Shadow Stalkers, but they're all like like Cainite Shadow Stalkers or whatever. But they're all fucking Daughters of Cain, anyways. Yep. Like, and so I'm just like, that was an opportunity for you to actually have Shadow Elves stay Shadow Elves, and then when the tome is released, you could actually bring those. But they like so desperately wanted the models to be allowed on a AoS table as soon as possible that they just gave them the Daughters of Cain.
Not really, because remember, like when those models released, it took like until the Morathi campaign book for them to actually be usable in AoS. They were out for like 4 or 5 months without like actual AoS compliant rules. So they were they were kind of like, okay. Actually, like Greg Geode will bitch nonstop for 5 months because he was just like, they still don't have points. When can I fucking take these things in my army?
When the book comes out, but whatever. I want to see Malaron. I want to see like some dark elfy looking shit.
Yeah, so do I. You want to see Umbra Elves because Shadow Elves don't exist. It's Umbra Elves.
Is that what they're going to be called?
Yeah, they're Umbra Elves. Umbra, yeah, whatever. All right, let's talk about the other Umbra Elves, the ones that are basically Slaanesh in the Order Battletome. Still don't understand why they're still Order, but whatever.
They should be Destruction. They should honestly be Destruction.
At this point, yeah, they might as well just make this a battle. At least Destruction would have a good Battletome. So
you're never gonna get Eshin models.
I mean, there's Eshin models inside the Blood Bowl team, right? Could just use those.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. So the Daughters of Cain battle allegiance or battle traits have not changed drastically since 1.0. They made some tweaks to some of them. So you still have the table where progressively as the game goes on, you gain commutative powers. So the first turn being reroll 1s to run and charge. Oh, run rolls, sorry, not charge rolls. Turn 2, reroll 1s to charge. Turn 3, rerolling 1s to hit. And friendly avatars of Cain are automatically activated in the statues. And then turn 4, reroll wound rolls of 1 for units. And then turn 5, reroll saves of 1. And you ignore battle shock. So, cool. Nothing really there has changed since 1.0. So nothing really to talk about. Still fundamentally, ever since Dark Eldar or Drukhari and 40k came out like years ago, the second book basically, they've introduced this kind of like turn-based power-up mechanism for them, and somehow like I'm guessing the Umbra Elves when they come out will have a very similar mechanic as well. It just seems to be like when it comes to Dark Elves, they like to have these kind of like continual like progressional buffs, right? Since Daughters of Cain are basically the Witch Elves of 40k in a sense, and then the Cabalites will be the Umbra Elves of Matt Laren's elves effectively. Now I'm curious what the Homunculus Elves will be like, but who knows in AoS? Who the fuck knows? All right. So addition on top of that, friendly Daughters of Cain have a 6-up shrug save against mortal wounds and regular wounds built in natively. Because, that's something they've always had. Most people actually don't know that because most people have only ever played against Hagnar in 1.0, which has a Warlord trait that buffs that up to a 5-up. Command trait that buffs that up to a 5-up. And thus, like, most people just assume that Daughters of Cain had a 5-up shrug save. And it's like they're always surprised when, like, wait, they have a 6-up? Yeah, just none in Hagnar is what it comes down to. So, addition on top of that, they have the same sub-allegiance, but they also inherited, I think, 2 new ones. I think they added the one from the Marathi book and then a new one in here and for sub-allegiance. So we'll go over them when we get to them. Nothing's changed fundamentally, though, for their battle trait in the first book. You got some command traits here, generalized command traits. Not going to speak too much about these because, honestly, you're not going to see many armies using these at all because you're going to be using the sub-allegiance ones, so they're not going to be really covered or used very often. They're not bad by any stretch of the mind. There's just most people are going to be playing the sub-allegiance. Or Marathi is your warlord or your general and thus can't really benefit from that. I do want to point out some major changes from the heroes that was important. They did change the Snake Ladies to our battle line if you have any of the scaly heroes now. And they also, I believe, changed the Bloodwrack Medusa to be drastically better, which is going to be a really nice change in a second when we talked about her. Right. Artifacts of Power.
We're going to Artifacts of Power. No, go on. Yeah, this is exactly where I was going to.
Okay, so Artifacts of Power. Those are actually going to be taken because the sub-allegiants have 1 artifact typically, and then most Daughters of Cain armies are going to have 1 battalion, which unlocks the second artifact. Honestly, the only one I wouldn't want to point out that's been kind of a drastic change is the Shadow Stone. It got changed to add to 1 casting roll instead of reroll 1s to casting rolls, which is kind of a nerf in a sense, but it's just more streamlined, so, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any like specific one I want to talk about in here, just mostly because like once again like I think at the end of the day you're gonna Daughters of Cain players are gonna be very much like playing only sub-allegiance mechanics and not really the generalized mechanics of the book. One that's gonna have to get fact. I believe there's one of the Daughters of Cain priest one that is completely useless. It just doesn't work. Oh, yeah. The Canine Pendant. So we haven't talked about the prayers yet, but apparently this one is totally unusable or it is redundant. So it basically allows a bearer to champ up to 3 players. If they do so, make a prayer roll for each by rolling a dice. However, on 1, it suffers Z3 mortal wounds instead of 1 mortal wound in a prayer. It's not answered. Well, apparently, whoever wrote this artifact forgot to read the prayer section of the book because the priest can cast... They can pray as many times as they have a prayer. So this does nothing. So if you have 3 prayers or 4 prayers, it doesn't matter. You can pray for each one of them. There's no limit. So for some reason, I don't know why this one says up to 3, because the prayer mechanism in this book has no limitation of how many times you can pray. You can pray for each prayer that a priest has. The only one that's going to be probably taken a lot is Blood Sigil, because since it knows an extra prayer and then there's no limit to how many prayers you can use, this one's going to be used because you get an extra prayer, which means you can also use it in the same turn as the other prayers you do know. So that one's probably going to be taken a lot, to be honest. But once again, don't know why this one was written. It was probably written at a time where they basically maybe wanted to limit how many prayers a priest did, but then when you actually get to the priest section, and this is over here, it says, and I'll read the paragraph, If a hero phase, each friendly Daughters of Cain that knows of any prayer can chant each prayer that they know. If they do so, make a prayer roll by rolling a dice. On a 1, the priest suffers 1 mortal wound, and the prayer is on. On a 2, the prayer is not answered. On a 3, the prayer is answered. In addition, any other prayer that they know, each friendly priest in the Daughters of Cain army knows 1 prayer from the prayer of the Cainite cult. You can either choose or roll on the prayer each, blah, blah, blah. So as you can tell in the paragraph section here, they made no inference to like effectively being limited to how many prayers you can cast in the round. In fact, this is specifically you can cast as many prayers as you know. So this relic, incredibly useless. So there's no upside, only down. Yeah, I don't know why it's like I said, it seems like the rules writer forgot to like check their notes before publishing this one. Let's talk about the spells for a second. They haven't changed from 1.0 really that much. The Mind Razor is still Mind Razor, and that's all we need to say.
It's still almost useless.
But it's at the end of the day, it's Mind Razor, still Mind Razor. No changes to Mind Razor. Mind Razor, Mind Razor, Mind Razor. So the only spell you're ever going to see cast that's not a War Scroll spell is going to be Mind Razor. Because the only wizard that they really have is basically Marathi Kane or the Medusa. And most of the time, you're going to just see Mind Razor. So anything else in that army is pretty much like useless. It's not useless. It's just like, and Marathi wants to cast Mind Razor because she's the one that gets to cast it confidently because she has a +1 to cast, I think.
She's +1.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the prayers. All of the prayers are very good. They also have not really changed since the first book. So the context here is that there's still the reroll shrug save prayer, which is going to be incredibly powerful. As Hagnar has not changed in Warlord trait, it has changed in the way the range of it, but the 5-up shrug save actually has changed. I believe the 5-up shrug save now is only for mortal wounds. I don't think it's for regular wounds. We'll double check when we get there. I think they changed it. So, but a rerollable 6-up shrug is still incredibly powerful for a glass cannon army. You can also like any prayer that makes you treat the turn as 1 higher, makes it so that your hag priest or hag priestess are going to be or hag queens are going to basically get their ability more consistently off because they did change those. So you want to basically make sure you're treating your unit that you need to buff up with them as counting higher on the turn value. And I believe that it's the let's see, is it a prayer?
That's the Sacrament of Blood prayer specifically.
Yeah. So Sacrament of Prayer is the one before you buff up a unit with the Hack Queen, you want to basically hit that unit with Sacrament of Blood first.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, these haven't really changed though fundamentally. No. I'm looking at these and these all look very familiar.
They haven't changed for the most part.
Yeah. Okay.
Now this is where all the book changes have happened. It's in the sub-Legion section. So Hagnar built-in mechanic already to include treat the number of battle rounds as 1 above. So they count turn 1 as turn 2, so they get reroll once to run and charge, and turn 2 as turn 3, and then now they did lose the ability to reroll all rolls to hit on turn 3. They no longer get that. But that's okay because the only thing that mattered for that was the Snake Ladies, and they changed that rule for their crystal touches anyway. So it's we'll talk about it in a bit, but it's a nerf, but it's not that much of a nerf. So Fanatical Faith with the command trait, it specifically refers to only wound allocated and not mortal wound. So I believe this basically means that they no longer have a 5-up shrug against mortal wounds. They would only have a 6-up shrug against mortal wounds. But they would inherently have a 5-up shrug against regular wounds. And it is wholly within 12 inches of the general and not within 14 or 7 that it used to be. So it's a little bit harder to spread the love of that command trait, but still incredibly powerful, right? 5-up shrug on 20 snakes is incredibly hard to shift, especially if they get the prayer off where they reroll the shrug saves.
Yeah. Looking at the allegiance abilities here, I mean, the top dog for so long was Hagnar. I got to say, overall, looking through this battle tome, something that was refreshing was the fact that you're not always going to see Hagnar at all times, always, now and forever.
Yeah, that's true. You won't.
And I mean, again, everything's been slightly tweaked, which I really greatly appreciate. Like you said, that you add not one to the number of the current battle round when determining the trait there, the blood trait. The command ability is different, right? I mean, you can use this command ability to start your
Well, they
movement
didn't
phase.
have one. They didn't used to have one.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, fuck. You basically use this ability to start your movement phase. Pick one friendly Hagnar Cauldron of Blood within 3 inches of any friendly Hagnar units, and add 3. If that unit has 3 or more models and are wholly within 12 inches of a friendly Hagnar hero, add 3 to the move characteristic of that Cauldron of Blood in your next until your next hero phase. And you can't double up on that command ability. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's utility, right? Now they actually have one.
I mean, it's just basically they're pulling that card further down the road. Their artifact of power is pick one of the bearer's melee weapon and you give it +1 damage characteristic if it charge. Which, by the way, for context for the audience here, since it's any hero and it doesn't specify what type of hero, technically the avatar and a Cauldron of Blood is a hero keyword, so you could make that avatar get +1 damage on his weapon profile. So keep that in mind for context. It's not, all the cauldrons have the hero keyword. So, and it's just pick any melee weapon, so you can buff up the.
I don't know why, but you're cutting a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, maybe it's just I'm too far from my mic again, and it just doesn't want to pick me up correctly. So anyway, there's not you could buff up. So that relic is just basically buffing up, avatar or like a slaughter queen, because slaughter queens can buff themselves up to some pretty ridiculous like damage output if they choose to, especially for their point cost. The Draki Garanaf is their second sub-allegiance in this book. Honestly, guys, not worth talking about. Probably not going to see.
Let's talk about it, but you're right. It is definitely not great.
One of the big change to Hack Queens with the way basically their role, their basically cauldron role works now. It's effectively unlikely for you to get it off consistently in the first 3 rounds of the game. So it makes like Sisters of Slaughter and Witch Elf units drastically less scary if they don't get that power off. And since it's not automatic anymore, they're going to suffer greatly from any shooting meta where basically they have to take bravery test. And the problem is like you don't want to be using your CP to ignore bravery, but unfortunately, like if you're going to be playing the old style list, which is heavy witch elves and Sisters of Slaughter list, you're going to basically lose your glass cannon units to bravery checks every first 2 turns if you don't get that power off every time. And the way it's rolled now, it's basically based on the number of powers you've benefited from the turn, and you get +1 on the roll. And I think it starts at a 5-up. It starts at a 5-up, right? So to get the Hack Queen power off, you need to roll 5-up on turn 1, a 4-up on turn 2, and a 3-up on turn 3, basically to get it off. So as you can tell, it becomes very hard to get that consistently off. And why Hagnar does make your units count as +1 means that you get it off on 4-up on turn 1, 3-up on turn 2, and 2-up on turn 3. So Hagnar gets those Hack Queen rolls more consistently. Draki Ganaf does not do that, and the entire sub-allegiance rules are written in a way to benefit and make Witch Elves and Sisters of Slaughters deadlier in combat. Problem is, they're glass cannon, and there's nothing to buff them, like durability-wise in this sub-allegiance. And they don't actually become faster either.
And on top of that, like the command trait for Draki Ganaf, it's just like it's not very helpful. It
is for the fact that you're going to lose models of bravery. So +1 bravery is good because you were trying to first 3 turns. You're probably going to lose a shit ton of models of bravery rolls. So like a single like gunboat from KO basically like kills like 8 or 10 like sisters. and then it's just a straight up D6 plus like 1 on like your battle shock test. Like it's just so brutally painful for if you're not walking around with a 5-up shrug, and on top of that like a bunch of immunity to battle shock. Like that's the big nerf to daughters. It's the no longer having the complete immunity to battle shock right at the gate, effectively.
I mean, no complaints here. I'm glad they finally did that. But I mean, this army requires you to build a very specific type of list. Same with the next one, I think.
Yeah. So the reason I shit on Drakic enough is it's yes, it makes sisters and daughters more deadly in combat, but really what they needed was a faster way to get to combat, and they don't. There's nothing that provides them that in this sub-allegiance. All right, so now we got Kelborn and the Kraith. Still original 1.0 sub-allegiance. The Kraith are interesting. Honestly, I haven't really read much about them, so let me take a second to read through their rule. And the reason why I haven't...
Oh, go on.
Reason why they're interesting is it suffers from the same syndrome as the previous sub-allegiance. They're trying to make a very specific unit function better, but they still haven't addressed like the fundamental problem of that unit, right?
So the ability for this one, yeah.
No, I said go for it. Go, talk through it.
I was while Jeremy's reading up on it, it is just like the other one, which is Witches and Sisters of Slaughter. This one's very exclusive to Sisters of Slaughter, and the ability that the entire Kraith army gets is that at the end of your combat phase, you roll a dice for each Kraith Sisters of Slaughter unit. Lo and behold, you're going to want nothing but Sisters of Slaughter in this fucking army, because on a 5-up, that unit can fight again. So super, super strong, but it requires you to take a ton of that unit. You know, I honestly think that they should have taken like another unit, maybe like an elite unit or something like that. Maybe like Cauldrons of Blood and Sisters of Slaughter, and then like on a 5-up they fight again. That might be something that would make it a lot more appealing to me. But if it's just Sisters of Slaughter, that 5-up, unless you're going to bring like a ton of units, which generally you just take like 2 blobs, I'm not super stoked on that. Their command ability is picking one friendly Sisters of Slaughter unit wholly within 12 of a hero and add 1 to the wound rolls for attacks made by units in that phase. Again, helpful, but it requires you to take nothing but Sisters of Slaughter. The command trait that your general is going to have is at the end of the command phase, if your general is on the battlefield and any enemy units were destroyed by attacks made by a Kraith unit, you receive 1 command point. That's okay. I mean, like it's CP generation, but it requires you to start killing things a ton, at least once, each combat phase, ideally, which if you have a bunch of Sisters of Slaughter, depending on what your matchup is, either will or definitely will not be getting that. And then the artifact of power is basically a venom of Nagrendra, and you basically pick one enemy unit within 1 inch, and you do D6 mortal wounds and instead of your melee attacks.
Yeah. It's once again trying to make a single unit work better, or 2 units in a very limited book, and your army's glass cannon. You want to get into close combat as fast as possible and do as much damage as possible. And unfortunately, Daughters of Cain, or the regular Witch Elves and the Sister Slaughters are not exactly like your primary, I guess, workhorse for that in terms of the book. They're fast, don't get me wrong, like they're natively fast, but the issue is that like, are they fast enough to outrun some gunboats or like Seraphon bubble wraps with shooting? Like probably not right now. We'll see. Maybe we'll be shocked in 2021. There'll be people figuring out ways to make these sub-allegiance work. But I just don't like sub-allegiance that shoehorn you in a very specific unit composition. I like them to shoehorn you into a very specific strategy, not necessarily a specific unit composition.
I agree. I agree.
Then we got the Kelborn, which probably are gonna, in my opinion, are gonna see some play, mostly because of their command ability. Their command ability is just effectively just a teleportation mechanic, which is great because if you have a bunch of CP on the table, you can use it more than once.
Well, real quick, this is actually the exact opposite of the command ability from Night Haunt. So if those of you who are familiar with Night Haunt, there's basically a come hither kind rule where for one command point, each one of your units from the army anywhere on the table can show up within 12 inches of the general and outside of 9 from enemy units. Masters of Shadow Paths is the exact opposite. You pick one friendly unit wholly within 12 of that hero and remove that unit and throw them away anywhere on the battlefield outside of 9 from an enemy unit.
Yeah. Yep.
It's fun.
And the reason why that's a powerful mechanic is because of some gimmicks, like with Morathi. If you teleport Morathi, the big girl Morathi, down to your opponent's like throat on turn 1, or even both of them, because they're now like linked together in terms of the amount of wounds they can take a turn, you can kind of create this like pseudo Morathi wall to prevent your opponents from like maneuvering, because you're like, you can't kill her for the next basically 3 turns, so she's gonna be there in front of your line, and you're gonna have to deal with her, and you can kind of block off maneuvering with that ability, right? So it's just like it's an incredibly like powerful mechanic, because yes, there's kind of that gimmick, but on top of that, if outside of the Morathi gimmick, there's just a late game like objective snagging potential, like teleporting like, you know, some daughters or sisters sisters of slaughter, or like even some snake units. What's up?
Hey, you can bring a Calibron list. So actually, you know what? I'm going to put a pin in what I'm about to say. And I think we need to go through all the rest of Calibron, but I just thought of something a little fucking nutty here.
Okay.
So we know that they're helpful for defensive structure and that they're useful with they're semi-useful in the current meta, because the ability for Calibron is just subtract 1 for hit attacks made with missile weapons that target friendly units. So your army is -1 to hit with ranged weapons, which is good against KO, good against Seraphon. That means that 30-man Seraphon or skink unit is hitting you back on 5s again rather than 6s. Not super helpful in the idea that, you know, they need those 6s to wound anyways, but being able to have not be +1 or not be that +1 to hit that they get, that's going to be pretty helpful in that 30-man blob or 40-man blob. The command trait is -1 to hit close combat weapons that are targeting the general. Artifact of power is pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. If an unmodified roll of the weapon is a 6, then you do 1 mortal wound in addition to normal damage. So all's fine and dandy, but I'm thinking here, and you know, you have that defensive structure against shooting, and you're right. You know, for some reason, big named units in order, or basically outside of death, named units, big powerful ones, aren't like shoehorned into a particular sub-faction keyword sometimes. But I'm thinking, the more I look at Calibron, the more I go, oh wow, there's one particular spell that seems crazy good with the method that you just mentioned, creating a Morathi wall to fuck with your opponent, right? Because Morathi is 1 war scroll. They count as 1 unit, but there's 2 war scrolls, right? Yeah. 1 unit, 2 war scrolls. So it's 2 models for that drop.
There might be 2 war scrolls actually. There might be 2 war scrolls. They're 1 war scroll purchase. They're 1 point. Oh no, they're 2 purchase. Yeah, they're 2. You have to take them both though when you buy them. They're 2 war scrolls.
You have to buy them. Oh, you know what? Wait,
they're 2 war scrolls.
Did you count as 2 separate units?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, never mind. Okay, because I was thinking if that was the case, then what you could do is you could use the spell. Where is it? Mirror Dance, and if they counted as the same unit, you could teleport both Morathi, small Morathi, big Morathi, and another hero, and then just put them anywhere on the board and bring 3 heroes up in the front. And, you know, you get one for the price of 2, basically. That's what I thought. But okay, yeah, never mind.
It's just this Calibron has play because it plays the emission better, and then with Morathi, she's just basically have this really obnoxious way of just making your opponent like have to deal with a very hard to annoying character now, right out of the gate. It's good.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're talking about the new sub-allegiance. So it's Vent Kai was in the Morathi Realm, Broken Realms book. Kelnar, I think, is brand new as well.
Oh, it's brand new.
So Kelnar is amazing. In my opinion, it's probably going to be the next best one after Hagnar. it's just the fact that their general ability is basically retreat and still charge the same turn. That includes Morathi, so she could retreat and charge. As what basically that's incredibly powerful. And we'll even you can use this command ability at the start of a combat phase. You pick one Kelnar unit, hold even 12 of a friendly Kelnar hero until next surface. If the modified hit roll for an attack made by a melee weapon targets a Kelnar unit is a 1, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound, and all of its attacks have been resolved. So that's
You better have rerolls.
Yeah, better have rerolls, or you're gonna take lots of wounds, mortal wounds back. So it's incredibly useful for like Morathi or like small units to deal with like horde mechanics. Basically, just you're incredibly durable, and you're just gonna make them take like mortal wounds from just rolling once effectively. And it kind of it works as a reverse punishing for piling into, because you're like, I'm forced to swing, but I don't want to maximize my swing, so I'm just not going to pile in. So it's just kind of, you can think of it as like a reverse kind of like preventing of piling in. The Relic also is very useful. Basically, it's the only summoning in the book. It just allows you to summon 5.
Oh, that's a command trait. The Relic is something very different.
Sorry, the command trait. So it just allows you to summon 5 Canaria Harpies anywhere in the battlefield more than 9 inches away from your opponent's unit. That's just great. Like, I mean, they're not. It's not like the Harpies are necessarily the most amazing unit on the table, but anytime you get an objective challenging unit for free, sure, sounds pretty good to me. And then the artifact is basically anytime you roll 6 to hit, you score 2 hits, and you make 2 separate wound rolls.
Yeah, it's
not bad. I actually like that, because once again, it's pick one enemy, one of the bear's melee weapon. You can put down an Avatar Arcane and a Cauldron.
Exactly. Arcane.
So effectively. The only downside, by the way, still of this army, it's still the problem of Hack Queens not getting powers off consistently until like the mid game and second half of the game effectively. So that's gonna be a problem. And then we got the Centra Kai, which is basically Snake Ladies focus army. Honestly, like the problem is like a lot of this is like their command ability is kind of overshadowed by the fact they haven't really changed anything in the Broken Realm book.
No, they have not changed anything from Broken Realms.
Yeah, that's
not at all.
We're not going to talk about them. They're not that interesting. I mean, the Keltnar are the interesting one, the new one, effectively.
Yeah. And, going into the next thing listed here is, of course, the War Scroll Battalions, which I think the first one we can just skip is the War Coven, because
it's a big one.
You're never going to play.
It has a good ability, which is Ignore Battle Shock, which is for a Glasscan army is phenomenal, but
which is great, but good luck fitting 5 battalions into 2,000 points.
Yeah. I'm really disappointed with some of the change. Like, they toned down most of the changes in terms of like the Cauldron Guard are the same. Like, it's like, once again, like, why didn't you just tweak these? Like, why didn't you tweak them? Come on. So Cauldron Guard is add 1 to run and charge for this unit. 2 units of Witch Elves, 2 units of Life Takers, and the Hack Queen. Once again, as we said, probably not going to see a lot of Witch Elves anymore. Not that great. Slaughter Troops, 2 units of Sister Slaughter, 2 units of Heartlander, and 1 Slaughter Queen. Units from this battalion can retreat and still shoot or charge later in the same turn. Sounds great, but you're probably either playing... This is basically playing Hagnar with Kelnar mechanic, or you could just play Kelnar and not worry about it. So I'm not sure we'll see lots of Slaughter Troops either anymore. It's probably better than the Cauldron Guard, honestly, but I don't think we'll see that often. Shadow Patrol... you can remove, instead of making a normal move for any of these units, you can basically redeploy them anywhere on the table. I actually really like that one, but the problem is it's a fairly expensive one to put together, and plus it requires you to take 2 units of Doomfire Warlocks, which honestly I haven't even looked if they got changed at all, because they kind of were like non-existent for a long time. And then 4 units of Canary Harpies are it's a very expensive tax to do that, especially since they can teleport themselves by staying in reserve. It's not much reason to take, like, it's really only for the Warlocks at this point, the teleportation mechanic. And also, like, you now have access to Shadow Stalkers, which basically do the exact same thing, so it's not like you really need any of these, honestly. The the Scaff Coven is pretty good. It's just basically one Blood Rack Medusa or an Iron Scale, 1 through 3, 4 units of Blood Sisters, and then 1 through 2 units of Blood Stalkers, and 0 to 2 units of Harpies. You're probably going to see that one a lot because Snake Ladies are just better than the regular units.
Oh my god.
And having an ability to just not take Battle Shock, as we talked about earlier, when you're losing the ability to always consistently get that High Queen power off, that's just amazing. Like, just put that in a Keltnar army. You basically ignore Battle Shock with your army. You're retreat and charging with your army, that's just incredibly useful. And Blood Rack Medusas have gotten a lot better this edition than what they used to be.
Yeah,
the Vampiric Guard. It just basically allows you to. It's just Morathi plus
Vampiric Guard, not Vampiric Guard.
Viperic Guard. Either way, it's just once per game you get a free CP expense.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. I mean, you get a command point. There's utility there because sure you're spending points in the battalion, but and the Shadow, you have to bring what you're always going to bring. You're going to bring Morathi King and the Shadow Queen. So you're bringing Morathi no matter what. And it's 1 to 2 Blood Rack Medusa. So just bring one, or Medusa Iron Scales in any combination.
Yeah, and the problem is you can't take the Chariot version of the Blood Rack Medusa. This one has to be on foot in the Viperic Guard.
Honestly, I think that's okay. I think that this is a tax for a 1 command point plus 1 every single turn. And an additional relic, and you're always going to be bringing Morathi.
It's once per battle. It's just once per battle.
Oh, you're right. Once per battle. Okay, so, but still, I mean, like, these are all units you're going to be bringing with the exception of 1.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. More command abilities is great because Morathi lets you do out-of-sequence attacks or shooting, and then the Solid Queen lets you do out-of-sequence, like, combat. So more command abilities is always nice. But I don't know. Like, it seems... I'm not seeing a lot of value necessarily out of this battalion, other than the fact that if you're already taking Morathi, it just lowers your drop count.
Yeah. Well, that third one seems really interesting. The Shrine Brood. You mentioned, of course, not being able to bring the shrine, the cart Medusa. This one has 2 Blood Rack Shrines, 2 units of Blood Sisters or Blood Stalkers in any combo, and 2 units of Canary Harpies. And the Blood Sacrifice is its ability. In your hero phase, you can pick any number of units from this battalion that are within 6 inches of the Blood Rack Shrine from the same battalion, and one model from each unit is slain. You can heal 1 wound allocated to the shrines. For each Harpy model that was slain, you can heal up to 2 wounds on the shrines that were slain. I mean, it's just the Blood Rack Shrines, which again are not great, but it is a good ability to get a bunch of units in 1 drop.
Sorry, I'm trying to close out the sun that's like blowing in my face. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah. It's just, but it's still not good. It's just not a good.
Yeah, it's still not great.
It's not a great.
I mean,
want to take 2 of those.
You're still going to see better battalions taken. Yeah. Like the Scathcoven or Scothcoven or whatever is a great one. Cauldron Guard is pretty helpful. Like, you're going to see those too, I think.
Yeah. So, moving on to War Scroll, we're not going to talk about Morathi. I think everybody knows Morathi now. Yeah. It's just... let's see. Let's talk about the things that changed. Yeah, Blood Rack. All right, here we go. So, the Blood Rack Medusa went from pretty mediocre to pretty damn good now. And so, like, they buffed pretty much everything about her. She just has more attacks. She does more damage. She does mortal wounds on combat. And she still retained her wizardry. She's still wizard. And on top of that, she still does the same thing when she does a shooting attack, basically. Where you just pick an enemy unit and you roll for each model within the range, and they take a mortal wound on a 5-up. The Shrine is effectively just a souped-up version of that. You do like explosive mortal wounds within 7 inches, and then the stair is still still there. She's just basically a little bit more. I really like her as a shrine, just because of the fact that like if you're gonna do a brawling type game, it's just having the more explosive like out of sequence damage in the hero phase, like between the Slaughter Queen, who can make you activate in the combat phase, plus her doing just splash damage in the hero phase as well. It's just like there's just so much like ways to basically free yourselves of combat in the hero phase, and then do whatever. Or if you really, this is for a Hagnar type list, because if you play Keldnar, I can just retreat and charge, so there's no like real benefit for me having that. But it's like basically preventing you being locked up in combats is always nice. And she's she's not that bad now in terms of like damage output.
Real quick, I'll wait till we go to the next page, and I'm going to counter something that was mentioned a little earlier. But go on.
Sure, go for it.
All right, you had mentioned a little earlier that you were not a big fan of the Vampiric Guard because of the fact that there was a tax unit, which was either the Bloodrack Medusae or the Medusae Iron Scales, because it was not the Bloodrack Shrine. I wholeheartedly disagree, because I totally forgot what the Iron Scale Medusae does. I think that is the best battalion in this book. The Vampiric Guard being able to have a battalion that includes Morathi, both versions of Morathi, in addition to Snake Ladies, which is helpful, in addition to the Medusae Iron Scales, is fucking wonderful, because the Iron Scale, it's a command ability alone, has a huge amount of utility to be able to make one unit be able to wholly within 12 run and shoot and charge later in that turn, and being able to run on 2d6 instead of d6. That's fantastic.
Yeah, but that's been around since the Broken Realm book came out, when she came out in the Broken Realm.
That's fine. That's not too far out. I mean, like, sure, it hasn't changed. That doesn't mean that doesn't make it a tax unit. That still means that it's
or you could take the Scaff Coven, still have access to her, and ignore Battle Shock.
Yeah, you could.
So it's just a Vampire Guard. It's only there if you somehow want to drop your drop count by 2 by having Morathi in the battalion. That's really the only value that brings. Or you can just take the Scaff Coven. That's my problem. You just take the Scaff Coven. This is like drastically better. It hits all your battle line for the most part, and it gives you immune to Battle Shock, which is huge on this army. Even though the Blood Sisters and the Bloodstalkers are a little bit harder to kill, or they suffer less from more Battle Shock because they're higher wound count, but just straight up just ignoring it just makes, that's one mechanic you don't have to spend CP on. You can just spend your CP on fighting, which is what the point is. And you're right. Like, she has the ability to make a unit run basically 2d6 and then still charge or shoot. So yeah, you're going to see the Iron Scale a lot, like in lists, because now she also makes the Blood Sister and Bloodstalkers battle line, which she did not in the previous iteration of the Morathi Broken Realms. She makes the battle line now as well. We'll talk briefly about this. This is the Warcry ban. Sorry, not the Warcry, the Underworld's ban. Apparently, they decided to make her. So Hack Queens are 90 points. She's 80 points with her retinue. Okay, Games Workshop.
I'll take it all times.
I was like, okay, I guess maybe the only restriction is that she's Hagnar only. So you can only really take her in Hagnar, because I think there's a limitation that you can't have cross-temple keywords. But, unfortunately, like, you would think, like, well, what about Morathi? Is she Hagnar only? No, she can still be benefiting of any of the sub-allegiances. So, Morgeth, the Blood and the Blade Coven, Hagnar only, but for some reason 80 points instead of 90 points with extra ablative wounds. Cool. I don't. Games Workshop, like, what? Okay, whatever. It's fine. Let's move on past that. It's fine. We already talked a lot about the Hack Queens. And
Hack Queen, Cauldron of Blood, Hack Queen normal, Slaughter Queen.
I just realized that it's Headlong Frenzy, Zealous Rage, and Slaughter Strength. That's really terrible. So they only get +1 on turn 2 on turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4. So it won't on turn 2 you only pass on the 4 up. On turn 3 you only pass on the 3 up. Oh, that's what I said. Oh, okay, so it's the same thing. I forgot, like, turn 1 doesn't give you any bonus. All right. So on a 5 up you can reroll wounds and ignore Battle Shock.
Yeah, so this is my big sticking point though with Daughters of Cain, because I remember every single time I've played against Daughters of Cain, they either had so many models that I had to approach them, or else they were going to win the objective game, or they were so focused on getting me and were able to move up so fast that they would get me by turn 1 or by turn 2, depending on whether or not I had first or second turn, and that can be pretty hurtful, you know. And so being able to not have the buffs till later in the game, at that point, a bunch of your shit's already dead, you know. So it's not nearly as powerful. And I mean, like, I'm happy about that because I'm not going to play Daughters of Cain, but still, it's a change that's not great.
Yeah. But it's the change they needed. They probably went over the top with the change to the Hack Queen, but that's okay. You're gonna be playing Snake Ladies anyway, so, and you already have a way to ignore Battle Shocks. So it's not like the one thing you'll lose is reroll the wound.
Yeah.
So the Slaughter Queen, major change for the Slaughter Queen. She no longer has to be your general to activate her command ability, which means that, you know, she's incredibly more interactive as a support character. I mean, she was already before, but now she's just like, there's no reason not to take her. She, especially on the Cauldron, because she retains the +1 aura. And honestly, like, I think now with the change to the Hack Queen mechanic, and change towards the Blood Sisters and Bloodstalkers, I'd rather just have a Slaughter Queen than a Hack Queen and not try to depend on the Hack Queen power. And she's still a priestess, so she can still do the prayer. And I don't know. I find her incredibly you know, now she's probably going to be the top picked, like, leader outside of Marathi Kane, effectively, in every book. You know, one big you know, I want to mention, like, one thing also about the Cauldrons, why you want them, is the +1 of bravery aura. Not because of the immune to battle shock mechanic, but for Mind Razor, it does affect the Mind Razor comparison, I believe. So, like, anytime you buff up your leadership value, your bravery value, means that you're more likely to get the full value of Mind Razor off against, like, other armies.
Yeah.
Where Witch Elf Slaughters really haven't changed. They added Canite Shadow Stalkers, which are going to be basically the base of almost every battle line requirement. There's at least 1 or 2 units going to be.
Wait, are Shadowstalkers battle line now?
Yeah, that's the change.
Oh, wonderful. And this is the Warcry man, the one that should be Dark Elves, but whatever.
Yeah, let's see. Where are they? Shadowstalker. Oh no, they're not battle line. Oh, I thought they made him battle line.
Not
I guess
battle line. Okay, that's what I thought.
They're 100 points, which is incredibly cheap, but having, like, a teleporting unit in the game available to you, it's very good. And they're gonna be, like, I'm pretty sure you're gonna see at least 2 units in every Daughters of Cain list of Shadowstalkers.
I don't see the utility in them, but
you mean?
I mean, there's subtract 1 to hit, but
with their utilities, they teleport. They have built-in teleport.
Oh yes. Okay.
That's why you take them.
So do Canary without being on the board.
Right, but the Canary are expensive and suck. Like, remember, Canaries are 90 points for 5. This is 100 points for 9 models. So if you're trying to steal objectives from people, Shadowstalkers are way more useful than a Canary unit. Canaries are scarier, but they're also super squishy. They're even squishier, I think, than the Shadowstalkers because they're 6-up save instead of.
And they come with a Shroud Queen that has 3 wounds instead of 1.
Yeah. So more wounds and more durability and so forth and so forth. Doomfire Warlocks. I wanted to check if they changed them at all. No.
They haven't. No. I mean, like, they're cool. But again, in that 1 battalion, they're not really going to be... There's not a lot of use there. I'm looking at the avatar here. It doesn't look like the avatar's changed all that much either. Or at all.
So he does have a major buff in here, which is that he gives +1 of prayer rolls. For a priest, a Holy Even 9, and this is only for the foot model because I do not believe that the one on the throne gets that too. No, the one on the throne does not.
Water Queen, And it is not. Yeah.
It's only for the foot one. So that's interesting. The foot one does that on top.
The Slaughter Queen. No, wait. Yeah. Why wouldn't it?
It doesn't. It's just they wanted to give a support role for the foot one that the chariot soul. I actually really like that, like a foot one, like having.
No, it says add one to the prayers of friendly daughters of Cain priests.
Yeah.
Which,
The
Slaughter.
No, I'm saying the ones on the carts do not have that rule. Only the foot avatar does. This is an avatar on foot.
Oh, I know.
Okay. Yeah. So
but the avatar on foot can still buff the prayers of Slaughter Queens or
Yeah. I'm saying the one on the cart doesn't. We're saying the same thing. Like the one on the cart doesn't get that rule. I'm saying only the foot one gets it. Yeah. So that's a incredibly powerful mechanic. I really like that now because making prayer rolls on a 2-up, especially since you can give your relic that gives reroll ones on prayer. Now you're basically almost nearly always guaranteed of getting a prayer off every time. And the problem, the foot ones is the only move if they're activated. But if you reroll once to pray, then it's like okay. With 2-ups, it's like you almost guaranteed for it to activate every round. So that's pretty cool.
And being able, just the fact that it's got a bubble of +1 bravery can help just in case you fuck up and your witch brew doesn't come off.
Yeah, and he's also 9-inch movement. I think that's faster than he used to be.
9-inch movement is big.
Yeah, so like he's actually pretty decent now on foot. I wonder how many points he is. He's probably like something kind of explicitly penalizing. Let's see. He's 130 points. That's pretty. It's not that bad actually. He also still has a +1 bravery aura. Is Idol of Worship? Is this the same as the one on the chair? Yes.
Later, Andrew. Yeah, make that proby.
Blood Sisters. They've changed since the Marathi book came out. They basically the big change is that they're basically turned to crystal attack is at the end of the combat phase, and you pick an enemy unit 1 inch and you roll for each model in your unit on a 3-up. They suffer 1 mortal wound, which means they no longer benefit very much from the exploding 6s to hit or the rerolls to hit. It doesn't really matter so much now for.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
having to fight it. I'm okay with that.
The big ones is the Bloodstalkers becoming basically ranged unit that gets to do mortal wounds on shooting and have pretty good shooting because they hit on 3s, win on 3s, -1 ren 1 damage.
On 3s.
Yeah, with 24-inch bow. So, and anytime they roll a 6 to hit, it's 1 mortal wound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Bloodstalkers have become very, very scary now in shooting.
Very good. Yeah, they are an 8-inch move. Infantry unit with 2 wounds, so there's a ton of utility there.
Yeah, let's talk. I'm not going to talk about the Canaries because they didn't address the problems of Canaries at all. They have no change. Now, in terms of prayers and invocations, so they have 2 endless spells and 1 prayer. The endless spells are okay. Not really going to talk too much about them. The Heart of Fury is where it's at. So the Heart of Fury which is funny because it basically has a locus rule, which is mostly chaos. That's what I'm saying. Like, why the fuck is this Battletome still order?
It can't be a chaos Battletome, so it might as well just be a destruction Battletome. But whatever.
So they can summon the Heart on a 3-up. Basically, I don't think it classifies as a prayer. So, and in order to summon a prayer, you must have a model.
It's called Invocation of Cain and Heart of Fury. It's not
a prayer. I'm just checking.
Well, no, it's a prayer because in your hero phase, 1 friendly Daughters of Cain priest can attempt to summon.
It's not classified as a prayer, which means it doesn't benefit from the +1 or the reroll 1s.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because it doesn't say pray, it says attempt to summon this invocation.
No.
Subtract 1 from the damage inflicted to a minimum of 1 for Daughters of Cain units wholly within 12 inches of this model. So, hey, Blood Sisters, you're basically Nurgle now because you reduce damage by 1. Or Death Guard.
You're
yeah, and then on top of that,
It also says that at the end of each battle round, if this model is on the battlefield, players set it up can roll the dice, of course, and add 1 to the roll, though, if there are any avatars of Cain within 6 inches of that model. And on a 1 to 3, it is removed from the battlefield. So just like a normal prayer, it's going to be able to go away. I think that some of the other prayers were pretty standard, that it goes away on a 5-up, I think.
Yeah. The corn one did, and then the Fire Slayer one did as well.
So this one basically on a 4-up it stays. What's very helpful is that if you bring that Avatar of Cain and then have maybe like 2 Slaughter Priests or Hag Queens on Cauldrons of Blood, you can make that pretty high. Oh, I mean, I guess you can only ever make it +1. Never mind. It's any Avatars of Cain.
It just means it sticks on the table on a 2-up, right? Yeah, on a 2-up. No, because it's plus. Oh yeah, on the 3-up. Yeah, you're right. On the 3-up.
Yeah, +1. Yeah. So
it's expensive though. It's 80 points, I believe, for that thing. Yeah, 80 points. It's expensive, but fuck, like making any kind of I think it's at all units within. Yeah, it's all units holding within 12. So like even your basically your shrines, your heroes. Yeah, that makes like the center brawler type Blood Sister units incredibly annoying to kill.
And it's on a 50 mil base. I'm just assuming there. I'm looking at it, and
let's find out at Games Workshop.
I'm gonna guess that both that and the swords are on that. While Jeremy may potentially be looking at the swords here, I think that there's something to be said about some of these 2 endless spells though. The Blade Wind, of course, is casting value 6. The Bloodrack Viper is casting value 7.
Yeah.
For the Blade Wind, when you set up, it's basically predatory, and it can move 8 or pardon me, it's set up within 9 inches of the caster. You can move 12 and fly. If you utilize it after the model is moved, units that moved over within 1 inch, and units within 1 inch suffer D3 mortal wounds. In addition, you can't apply cover to units that are within 12 inches of the model. Very meh, like not a lot of utility there. I think the Bloodrack Viper isn't horrible though. It also moves after you set it up, and of course it's set up wholly within 9 of the caster with a very, very large base. I don't know how big that base is, but it seems pretty big. And it can move 9 inches, so it's not as fast. But after it moves, the player moved it can pick 1 enemy unit within 1 inch and roll 3 dice. For each roll that is equal to or greater than the unit's wound characteristic, 3 models from that unit is slain. And being the fact that the Bloodrack Viper is it's 40 points, it's incredibly cheap for what it does. That means that if you do that and you bring 3, I don't know, you could remove 3 Necropolis Stalkers, and it's already made its points back over 3 times.
Well, you're thinking about it wrong. You're thinking about targeting, like, yeah, it's potentially Necrotic Stalkers, but it's equal to or higher, right? So support heroes which are 5 or 4 wounds instantly die anytime you roll 1 of those dice. That ties to. And in the second use case, it's a 100mm base. That's a Lord of Change base.
Very big.
So it's very big. So it's going to be useful for blocking movement. Incredibly useful for blocking movement. I actually don't really like that spell because I think it can backfire on you very badly. Because it can remove snakes pretty effectively. It's an endless spell, so you're
back on you. Yeah, they don't have like a bound spell version.
Right, and then they don't also since it's such a big thing, and if it hinders your movement, because most of your army doesn't fly, so it's not like if I'm bringing snake ladies, I don't want that thing to come back at me and kill snake ladies and also prevent me from moving in a way that makes sense. So I actually don't personally like it very much. Yes, it's cheap, but the problem I have with endless spells is, especially when you're playing a melee specific brawler type list, you don't want things to hinder you in your game plan. And things like that do potentially hinder you on your game plan. Now, granted, it is incredibly attractive to just drop this 40-point model to just say, fuck you, Skink Priest, here you go. You just remove a Skink Priest a turn, on average. So it's just It is very good.
Literally 50% chance to kill Skink Priest every single time.
Every single roll, and he has 3 rolls. So I think the success rate is actually something like 87 or something percentage. So it just removes a Skink Priest almost all the time. I mean, it makes sense. It's a giant fucking snake thing. But once again, Heart of Fury is going to be where it's at.
It's 80 points, but I mean, that's fine. That's fine.
I mean,
yeah.
Against like KO shooting, like if against like KO armies that want to shoot your characters, anytime you reduce their damage to 1, because most of their gunshots are going to be damage 2, like reducing them to damage 1 really cripples them in terms of like output, right? So especially if they're targeting characters and they're -1 to hit, and then on top of that they're one less damage, so all their guns are 2 damage each, or it's just like suffering even more.
It's set up wholly within 12 of the priest that's summoning it. It doesn't move if it survives.
That's right. It doesn't move. So it just stays there. So that's why like you don't necessarily want it to stick around. You only because it's at the end of each battle round. So if you're top of the turn, you don't really care. If you're bottom of the turn, you're kind of dependent on like the initiative roll going your way. It's like every other like endless judgment basically. So it's sticking around or not is not. There's no negative or benefit. There's no negatives or downside to like it. Like you don't necessarily want it to stick around, and you also don't want it necessarily just not. You also want it to be around, right? So it comes down to where you are in the initiative order of that turn.
Yeah, you're gonna have to use some finesse when using it to make sure that you can either have it go away so you can bring it back, or try to keep it there, depending on where your situation is going to look like in the game.
I mean, the army is so fast. Like to be honest, like on turn 1, you're just wanting to summon it up front, get all your characters within 12 of it, your snake block wholly within 12 of it, and then just basically after that turn, you're like, cool. If it's still on the table, it's still on the table. If not, then I'm going to charge you. So like, it doesn't really matter. That army's so fast. With the Iron Scale on the table, a 2d6-inch run for a Blood Sister unit, it's just gonna. They're just gonna get wherever they need to get to.
Yeah, true. And then looking at the points here, some have changed, some haven't. I mean, again, no more like we talked about with Slaanesh, no more unit discount. Nope. So there's that. Morathi hasn't changed since Broken Realms. I'm looking at.
So one of the big things about the Morathi, the new Daughters of Cain, is the fact that they can ally with Deepkin, and the fact that Deepkin have access to the new Alopic Sharks now, like preventing piling in for your glass cannon units is incredibly powerful. So like using that to, I can see Daughters of Cain players taking 1 shark unit just to prevent like piling in mechanics and some charges. That's going to be so problematic for so many armies that just want to be like against Fire Slayers, like, because that's my, expertise effectively. Like removing my ability to fucking pile in the first round of combat when you engage me, because you're going to get to engage me. You're so much faster than me. Like really cripples my ability to hit back for that first round of combat. And it just gives you a free turn and just punk me as hard as you can, especially if you get Mind Razor off. So I don't know. I think that's very powerful.
I agree. I think that's helpful. Something that I think is very fun, and again, maybe it should be a destruction army, is this is the first order army ever not to have Sigmarines or Sigmar as its ally. It's just Cities of Sigmar and Ida Deepkin. So no Stormcast whatsoever.
Yep. Thank God. Yeah. Tired of Stormcast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Stormcast is the quintessential, but as of the events of Morathi Cain, there's no possibility of that happening. Like that's like they fucked up hard. But that's fine. They're like at war with each other, basically.
Do you want to take questions from the audience? I gotta go use the man's room for a second.
Use the man's room. I'll take any questions here. I don't know how many people are on. Restream is telling me that there's 0, but I already looked earlier, and Restream's effing up a little bit when it comes to showing us the actual user count. Because right now in chat, for example, on Twitch, we still have a great number that are not randos. So yeah, I mean, you guys have any questions, but or or have any thoughts you want to share while we're at it, you guys? I think that this book is going to be good. I don't think there's anything here that's game shattering, personally, but it's going to be a book that's going to have a lot of utility. I think that this army is meant for 3.0. Like Jeremy said, I think that this is going to be the first time ever you're going to see like full ass Daughters of Cain lists that will have allies associated with it. Alloplexes are fucking wonderful. When I fought against them with, in one of our stream games, you can see on YouTube, or I think it might still be on Twitch. I'm not quite certain, but in one of them, he brought just pure Deepkin against my OBR, and being able to not pile in with certain things like Mortet Guard was huge. So being able to really fuck with that, I don't even remember how many points alloplexes are. I think they're like 110 or 100 each. Maybe they're cheaper. If they're cheaper, fucking bully on you, like bring a whole ass unit or a max unit. But if they're 100 or 110 points, I would bring at least 2 or maybe even 3 of them and take full advantage of that. How many points are alloplexes, Jeremy?
So I was saying no, just bring one. They're 110 points. You only want to bring one anyway. It's because you don't necessarily all matchup need the removal of the piling in, and you just need it for the. You can't depend on it. You shouldn't depend your strategy on it. But when it's there, you can basically organize your entire charge maneuver around like that, preventing piling mechanic. So the way I would describe it as is, it's a nice toolbox add for very cheap. I would not go more than 1 shark, because every shark you take means you're competing for some shadow stalkers, or almost 5 more blood stalkers, or blood sisters. I'd rather just have more of those, like especially shadow stalkers. I like I said, like think about it like your core, like before you build the rest of your list. It's 2 units of shadow stalkers, maybe a shark. That's 310 points in your list right there. The Shadow Stalkers can body block your backfield from deep striking with the shark supporting them, as well as like pulling away wounds or preventing pylons. And then your rest of your army can basically move forward. And then in the second half of the game, when you're like, cool, I don't have to worry about reserves anymore, coming down to fuck up my backfield objectives because I've been body blocking them with Shadow Stalkers, I can now teleport the Shadow Stalkers to do effectively something else during the game. And the shark can reposition because he moves fast. So the whole point of this is like, I'm already counting 330 points of just toolbox, and then the rest of the army is built around. I would try, when we do the next AoS game, I will try to play Daughters of Cain list, because I own a Daughter Cain of army. I do not own Morathi. I like Morathi, the way she's changed, but I think I have that syndrome where I always want to play the big model at first, and then I realize like I'd rather just have more toys. So I think I'm just gonna depend on not running Morathi in the book. Yeah, I was just gonna say like this new Daughters of Cain is basically kind of what I wanted Hedonites to be, which is basically a brawler army that's fast, because that's what that's the type of game I enjoy. And Fire Slayers are a brawler, but they're not fast enough to compete against the new meta that's arisen. Like they still can compete, but it's just much harder to win than it used to, and it's also more. It's not as enjoyable. Like so, I'll give you a context for the audience here. One of the last TTS tournament I went to, I played against Caleb, I think is his last name, and he played KO, and we played Star Strike. The objectives landed on one side of the table. He dropped a Warp Lightning Vortex in the middle of my army, which I purposely split because I wanted to cover more ground and also minimize the amount of damage the Warp Lightning Vortex could do. But because of the objectives landing on the opposite end of that mission, I had to basically half my army had to go walk around the Warp Lightning Vortex to get to contest at some point. But they were effectively never going to contest because I'm a 4-inch fucking movement model. So what ended up happening is I never got to charge, I never got to shoot, and I lost the game because I could not get on point because he just kept maneuvering outside of my potential charge range. And he didn't really kill anything, but he just won just because of play to the mission better, because he had speed and I didn't. And it's one of those missions where, yeah, that can get penalizing because you don't know where the objectives are and it's hard to maneuver and place correctly. But Daughters of Cain, when I look at this now, it's like playing Fire Slayers, but with double the speed. Yeah, you lose some durability, but I don't think you lose that much durability in comparison, and the damage power is still there. Like, Blood Sisters still hit like fucking trucks, especially if you get the Mind Razor off on him, and then Blood Stalkers are just better ranged units than like the Orc Herf cards. So I don't know, I'm looking forward to trying them out, and especially now that the Iron Scale basically makes them battle line, I'm for sure going to try them out. Because as much as the Medusa change is cool, like the 2d6, like it's 2d6 run is basically the same as it's like you know when my Fire Slayers have that with like ruin that makes them 2 extra inches on movement and potentially 2 inches. It's like, oh, I could just have a command ability that does that but better. And also that for that to work, I have to get a prayer off to get me run and charge, or I could just have a command ability that just does that 2d6 run plus run and charge. It's just like, I just look at the Daughters of Cain book and I'm just like, oh, this is Fire Slayers but faster and more deadly. Got it.
It's kind of always been the sentiment, though, right?
They used to be that way. When I at LVO 2019, when I played Anthony twice, I think, in a total of 3 Daughters of Cain players. That
Anthony Lawrence
at AoS at LVO 2019.
Yeah.
We're effectively playing like brawler armies that competed for the center, and like that's where Fire Slayers like have the edge against Daughters of Cain. Is that they're slightly more brawler than Daughters of Cain, but we're not playing that meta anymore. We're playing this shooting meta with like teleportations and gimmicks and so forth. So like having a slow durable army doesn't get you wins because you're never gonna put your army full effectiveness in the table. Daughters of Cain at least have the ability to catch your opponent. Fire Slayers just do not have that mechanic available to them. It's just not really a thing that they have. Like I said, like Kyle didn't really kill anything, but he didn't have to, because that's not how AoS works. You don't have to kill things to win in AoS. You have to score points, and if you can keep doing that over and over, then you're gonna win the game.
Yeah. I have to agree there. I mean, like, it's all about the most utility you can apply to the table possible. So we're going to have to find out how things move as we go along. But I mean, I'm excited either way that they got a new book. I'm mainly excited that it's not the same. I wasn't always a fan of having to play against them.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
We've been going at it for almost 2.5 hours now. A little bit more, almost close to that.
We started a little afternoon Pacific time, so we are now at almost 2.5 or
almost 3. Yeah, we're almost 3 hours in. Actually, this is much faster than I thought we were gonna take. But honestly, like, if you guys have any questions, we would love to answer them. Me and Alex are not going to play a stream game tomorrow. Alex is going to be playing a TTS game tomorrow.
With Garrett, well, maybe we got to find out from Garrett. Garrett's got a chaotic schedule.
Sure. Either way, we're gonna probably start playing some AoS again, since AoS is now getting a little bit more exciting with changes. And honestly, like, I'm looking forward to like trying the Hedonite book. Unfortunately, my game store had no Hedonite new models, and neither did it have new Daughters of Cain models. So I'm going to have to scrounge up online to see if I can get something together. I'd love to play some Hedonites. I want to make them work, but honestly, right now this book is not what I wanted. Effectively, it's not that they can't work. It's not the list I wanted to play with them effectively. I think the book is great. It's just not the type of list I want to build. I don't want to build a summoning list. I want to build a kind of, like I said, a fast brawler style army. And unfortunately, Hedonites do not really fit that role. Daughters of Cain do, though. So I might take a look at how I'm gonna play them, since I already own the army effectively.
Fucking bring it! Bring some Daughters of Cain. It'll be fun. You got like you said, you have the models except for Maranthe Cain. We don't want a proxy, but it is possible to just proxy Maranthe Cain.
I don't want to play. I don't want to play her. I need to not play her. It's like every time when the new army comes out, I'm like, I'm like, hey, big model. I gotta play the big model. No, you don't have to play the big model. It doesn't. There's a game plan you can play with the big model, but it doesn't have to play with the big model. You know, how many games have I taken techless? I'm like, fuck, this guy sucks.
Pretty soon, you won't even have to worry about ever bringing techless with the amount of shit that's going on with Lumineth. So, what you're I think adding more units to the army that currently exists.
Correct. Yes, that is factually accurate.
Right now, you have what
you get 2 spirits. Spirits of the Wind. You get a hero from Spirit of the Wind, the wizard that rides the fucking Goku cloud, which I was like, how more anime can you make it than the fucking guy riding the Goku cloud from Dragon Ball Z? And then you have the banner. Then you have 2 heroes on the mount. Then you have the unit of the mounted unit, and then
it's one scroll.
No, they're 2 separate scrolls. There's a special. Yeah, they announced a special character one today. And then the one they revealed earlier was the non-special character one.
Oh, you're talking about the dude on the... My bad.
Yeah. And then you have the unit on the mounted unit. And then you have the new twins, which are special characters. And then you have the new artillery piece. And then you have the sword wardens, which actually make 2 kits. They're the lawbringers and the sword wardens. What?
Sword masters or lore masters?
No, they're lawbringers. They're called lawbringers.
Whatever.
The guys with the can of the sword. Yeah, they're like wizards with they're like the evocators from Stormcast. Hey, how you doing, Fluke?
Let's see. You know what? I'm gonna look at this. So right now, we currently have for Lumineth, we have Techless, we have Ethereon, we have the 2 heroes. Then we have Battle Line. We have the spears. Then we have the bows. We have hammers. We have both units of spirits of the mountain, and then we have Ethereum.
You already said Ethereum, and then we have the Horsies, the Dawn Riders.
Marathi, Ethereum, both guys, bows, spears, spirit, other guys. Then we have the cavalry. So really, there were 10 units before, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and now we have the fox. We have the furry. We have
foxes. There's 2 of them.
There's 2 different foxes.
Yeah, there's a special version, like the Spirit of the Mountains. There's a unique one, and then there's a non-unique one. The same thing with the foxes. There's a unique one and a non-unique one.
Okay, so there's a fox. So there's a fox and a unique fox. So there's 2 furries. Then there's a mounted hero and a mounted named hero.
Yep.
Then we have the twins. That brings us up to 15. So it brings us half to what we were already at. Then we have the
Windcaster, the guy riding the cloud.
The Windcaster is the one on the Nimbus. And then we have
the Banner Boy.
The Banner Boy. That's another one. Yep. And then we have the artillery piece.
Yep.
Then we have Sword Masters.
Yep.
Then we have War Masters, the one with a shorter sword and the staff. You saw those.
Yeah, Lawbringers. I think they're called the Lawbringers.
Lawbringers, yeah. Now we're already plus 100% new units. And that's regardless of the 2 different versions of kangaroos that we're getting.
Yep. Yeah. So the army doubled in size, effectively.
They're adding 12 units to a 10-unit army.
Yeah. And hopefully more sub-allegiances, because right now I think we'll see, but probably not. But we'll see when the Techless book comes out, because that's when the new War Scrolls from these ones come out as well.
Yeah.
And let's see if they add any more sub-allegiances.
Gingy, if you didn't know, I'm sure you may have already known. You can go on the Warhammer community site to check. But in our last D&D session, a good friend of ours was playing as a Kitsune for our D&D group, and he was a
Fox Spirit.
He was a Fox Spirit rogue thing. There is a Kitsune coming for Lumineth. Am I excited? Absolutely not. Does it exist? So be it. But I just want my fucking vampires and new OBR stuff. That's all I want. and shadow elves. I want dark shadow elves. Yeah. I
want vampires as well.
So Gingy, I gotta say this since you're on the line. I really wanted a pure Soulblight book, and we know that it's going to be called Soulblight Grave Lords. We know that that's going to be a thing that exists. It hasn't been officially announced. The leaks are true; they are real. I was expecting it to be released today or announced today. Turns out we got a Who's That Pokemon situation where the previewed image was a redone version of the super old White King with the little bat ear helmet on the Warhammer community site. I hate to say it. I don't want to admit it. I wish it was not so, but it's like Soulblight Grave Lords is likely the remixed, rebranded version of Legion of Nagash. Because technically the Legion of Nagash is Asiak Bone Reapers. That's like his like guys to get the shit done. But his general army is probably going to be Soulblight Gravelers. And I don't want that to exist, but people like skeletons for some reason, and they want to keep that.
Indeed.
Yeah, boo. Boo is my response too. I'm not stoked.
Right. Yeah, you're more than welcome to keep talking to the audience, but I'm gonna go do something, like see my wife, see how she's doing, see the world. We've been at it for 3 hours talking about these books. I'm just super excited to try to build lists for both these books, and obviously Daughters of Cain list is already kind of self-written. The Hedonite ones is going to be one that's kind of like a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is a good time to try to bounce off because we have been on this for X amount of time. We should probably do something better with our lives. But you guys, again, like I said when Jeremy was going to get a drink a little earlier, like and subscribe, give us the feedback that we might need and or want. I've definitely gotten a lot of really good feedback on a personal nature. But hey, Apple Podcast does have a review system, so does Facebook. So let us know. And we will keep you guys posted. Like always, whenever there's a new codex or Battletome, the day of release, we are going to have these live streams to have a discussion and see what's good. So, do look forward to the next ones. I think the next one is probably going to be Dark Eldar and or another
Drukhari. It's Drukhari. The next book release is Drukhari. So we're gonna cover that. Actually, it might be Techless first, but either way.
Ooh, yeah, good point. So it might be Techless, it might be Dark Eldar. Who the fuck knows? We'll get there when we get there.
Indeed. All right, guys. We really appreciate your support and watching and so forth. I do want to say that we can't wait to see you all at tournaments again and face to face. Obviously, we've all picked up a few pounds, so maybe we should make the effort of losing a few pounds by the end of the year.
That's right. Shut up.
Oh, by the way, Alex, for context, I've been depending on Alex to give me help finding dumbbells, and I found dumbbells I want to buy. They're just like either price gouge to shit or completely not available. Oh! He spilled his drink on his lap. All right. Well, that's going to be it for us, folks, as he goes to clean up.
I'll keep you posted. I'll be on the lookout for those ones, by the way, for you.
All right. See you guys tomorrow for the stream game if it happens. Hopefully it does. And if not, we'll see you guys on the next show. And that's it for me. Enjoy your Hedonites. Enjoy your Daughter Cain. Play some AoS. Get out, see some sun. Exercise a bit. Let's get past COVID. All right. Bye, boys.
There you go.
And ladies.
Bye.